Chapter 334. Xiandu, I already know why you're here. I understand your worries. The Eight Visions Palace is a world of its own. As long as I don't want to, no one can disturb me. So just do it. Don't worry about me. Just follow your heart. How could Yi Ang's intentions be hidden from the Grand Pure One? As soon as he thought about it, the Grand Pure One understood the cause and effect. If saints were so easy to scheme against, they would not be called saints. Of course, Feng Zichen was an exception. He had Pangu to conceal the secrets of heaven, and could do what ordinary people could not. Even if he schemed against saints, saints would not be able to sense it. Thank you, Master. Hearing this, Yang knew in his heart. Shangdu was done. Shangdu was built near Mount Shouyang. Even if the Grand Pure One denied it, the world would not believe that Shangdu had nothing to do with him. Moreover, the manager of Shangdu was his only disciple. You're from the human race and don't have any Dharma treasures. I'll give you this treasure to protect yourself. Looking at Yang, the Grand Pure One suddenly said. Then, a red light flew out from his body and landed in Yi Ang's hand, turning into a small red flag. This was the floating flame flag. It was formed from the lotus leaves of the chaos treasure, the green lotus of creation. It was one of the Khanate 5-element flags, a supreme-grade Khanate merit numinous treasure, the southern floating flame flag. This was one of the strongest Khanate numinous treasures, second only to Khanate cardinal treasures. Thank you, Master. Yi Ang said excitedly as he touched the treasure flag in his hand. He had heard Feng Zichen mention the origin of the Khanate 5-element flags, so he knew that it was the top Khanate numinous treasure of the primordial world that could suppress providence. The southern floating flame flag was extremely powerful. It could mess up yin and yang, reverse the 5 elements, and make all evil retreat. Alright. If there's nothing else, you can leave. After bestowing the Dharma treasure, the Grand Pure One began to chase him away. Then, Master, I'll take my leave first. Suppressing his excitement, Yang stood up and walked out. The Grand Pure One has agreed. Just as I expected. In Yi City, the moment the Grand Pure One nodded in agreement, Feng Zichen sensed it. Just as he had thought, the Grand Pure One did not refuse. Of course, he had no reason to refuse something that was beneficial to the development of the primordial world. Although the saints were stronger than the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian, they were not as carefree and free as they were. They were restricted by the heavenly Tao everywhere. Your Majesty, Master has agreed. After a while, Yang came back and said to Feng Zichen with a happy face. I already know. Feng Zichen nodded and indicated that he already understood. Then he asked Yang curiously, look at how happy you are. Did you get some treasure from the saint? Just now when he gave Yang the innate yin and yang sword, he didn't hide it at all in front of everyone. The Grand Pure One naturally saw it clearly. That was another reason why Feng Zichen gave Yang the treasure. Look, although the human race is poor, we still took out a superior grade Khanate numinous treasure as a gift for Yi Ang's Tao attainment. As his master, the Grand Pure One wouldn't be stingy, right? The treasure that he gave out must be extremely precious. Otherwise, if word got out, he would be ridiculed by others. It would really be embarrassing. Your Majesty, look. When he first obtained the treasure, Yang also had the intention to show off. He took it out excitedly and let Feng Zichen have a look. He still remembered how Feng Zichen sounded when he mentioned the Khanate 5-element flags. Floating flame flag. Xianqing had lived in Kunlun Mountain for a long time, so he was naturally familiar with the treasures of Kunlun. Therefore, Feng Zichen recognized the origin of this treasure at a glance. Seeing this item, Feng Zichen knew that he had achieved his goal. Although he didn't know what treasure the Grand Pure One had given him after Xuandu became a disciple, Feng Zichen was sure that it was definitely not the floating flame flag. Such a treasure was formed from a chaos treasure, and contained a trace of the mysteries of the Great Tao. It was very useful to saints and would not be easily given away. This flag is a Khanate merit numinous treasure. It has the ability to suppress providence, and also has a trace of heaven providence. It's your fortune to be able to obtain it. In the future, as long as you don't go against the heavens, you can expect to reach the Great Tao with this treasure. After the excitement in Yi Ang's heart passed, Feng Zichen said, I know. You once told me the origin of this flag. The moment Eong obtained the floating flame flag, he knew that it was a treasure that could help people attain the Tao. It's good that you know. Just as he was about to nod, Feng Zichen glanced at the floating flame flag again from the corner of his eye. Suddenly, a throbbing feeling surged in his heart, disturbing his mind. This was something that had never happened before. Feng Zichen was no stranger to the floating flame flag. That was when he was at Kunlun Mountain. There were many treasures of the three pure ones for him to play with, and the floating flame flag was among them. However, in the past, when he often came into contact with the floating flame flag, there was no abnormality at all. However, when he saw this flag today, his mind was in a mess. It was really strange. What's wrong? Seeing Feng Zichen's expression suddenly change, Yang asked worriedly. Nothing. I just need to rest for a while. With that, Feng Zichen closed his eyes and used the Khanate 8 trigrams with all his strength to find the reason for the throbbing. On the other side, on Penglai Island, Xianqing also temporarily put down the things at hand and used the Tao derivation technique to deduce. It's it. The green lotus of creation. With the addition of Xianqing, Feng Zichen, who was originally clueless, found the source of the abnormality in an instant. It was the lotus seed borne by the Khanate cardinal treasure, the green lotus of creation. The green lotus of creation. I see. In a trance, Feng Zichen understood the cause and effect, so he put away his divine power and ended the deduction. The green lotus of creation was the most orthodox descendant of the 36th grade green lotus of creation. It was far from what the 4 great lotus platforms and the Khanate 5-element flags could compare to. Even if the green lotus of creation was inferior to these 9 Khanate spiritual treasures in terms of level, orthodoxy was not based on level, but on origin and inheritance. The green lotus of creation had the most complete inheritance of the chaotic green lotus, and it was also the treasure that was most likely to evolve into the chaotic green lotus. Therefore, it was the most orthodox. After obtaining the green lotus of creation, Xianqing had not touched the Khanate 5-element flags. Therefore, there was no abnormality at all. Today, Eong brought the southern floating flame flag to Feng Zichen's side. At the same time, on Penglai Island, Xianqing also happened to come to the Chaos Spirit Pool. Under such a coincidence, through Xianqing and Feng Zichen, the green lotus of creation sensed the aura of the Khanate 5-element flags and the 4 lotus platforms at the same time. Chapter 335. As if a certain condition had been met, the green lotus of creation seed suddenly underwent an inexplicable change. However, it also seemed to be afraid of something. This change was forcefully suppressed by itself. It did not cause any abnormalities, so Xianqing did not notice it at all. Perhaps it was unwilling, or perhaps it was something else, but the green lotus of creation seed still made an effort in the end, causing a trace of abnormality that Feng Zichen noticed. The green lotus of creation seed actually has such an ability. What a heaven-defying creation. He learned of its purpose from the green lotus of creation seed. Feng Zichen sighed, and was also a little shocked. But more than that, he was pleasantly surprised. The green lotus of creation seed wanted to grow. That was its purpose. Ever since Xianqing obtained the green lotus of creation seed, he had been idle in the treasure vault. He had never paid any attention to it, let alone helped it grow. Of course, it was not that he looked down on it, but that he had not thought of how to cultivate it. After all, it was a lotus seed borne by the innate cardinal treasure, the green lotus of creation. The innate lotus flower that grew was at least a superior grade innate spirit treasure. However, a superior grade innate spirit treasure was obviously not enough to satisfy Feng Zichen. Therefore, he was waiting. He was waiting for him to find a suitable treasure to improve the innate origin of the green lotus of creation seed, and bloom an innate lotus flower that was at the supreme grade innate spirit treasure level. However, before Feng Zichen could find a suitable innate spirit treasure, the green lotus of creation seed could not wait any longer and took the initiative to grow. Of course, there were conditions for its growth, and they were very harsh. Otherwise, it would not have alarmed Feng Zichen. As mentioned earlier, the green lotus of creation seed was the most orthodox descendant of the chaos green lotus. It held its most complete inheritance, and was also the treasure that was most likely to turn into the chaos green lotus. Therefore, after sensing the world-cleansing white lotus and the floating flame flag at the same time, the two treasures that were transformed from the remnant body of the green lotus of creation, the aura of the chaos green lotus that was hidden deeply in the green lotus of creation seed was revived. At that moment, the green lotus of creation seed had the desire to devour these two spirit treasures. However, it was worried about the heavenly path, so it suppressed this desire and did not dare to reveal it. But in the end, he was unwilling to give up just like that. Therefore, he attracted Fengzichen. As long as it devoured all the connate numinous treasures transformed from the remnant body of the chaos green lotus, the creation green lotus would be able to transform back into the chaos green lotus. This was the conclusion that Fengzichen deduced, and it was also the message that the green lotus of creation told him. This faced with such shocking news, how could Fengzichen remain calm? That was the chaotic green lotus. It was said that even the birth of the great god Pangu was greatly related to him. Creation was one of the most miraculous powers in the world. It could make the impossible possible. If Fengzichen obtained the chaos green lotus, he could use it to transform into a chaos demonic god. At that time, the true great Tao could be expected. The primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian was nothing. Innate gods were the seeds of Daoyuo Jingxian. Chaos fiend gods were the seeds of the great Tao. Fengzichen didn't know if he could really attain the great Tao. However, the chaos fiend gods would definitely become the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. On this point he was certain, because the imprints of the 3,000 chaos fiend gods had already proven this. Among them, none of them were inferior to the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. Unfortunately, this can only be thought of. It's completely impossible to succeed. After a moment, Fengzichen came back to his senses from his beautiful fantasy. He shook his head and sighed. This matter seemed simple, but it was even more difficult than him achieving the primordial chaos Tao realm. The chaos bead still had a chance to recover, but the chaos green lotus was absolutely impossible. For some reason, the heavenly Tao's fear of the chaos green lotus had almost reached a pathological level. It was not enough to split it up. He even arranged for each of the connate numinous treasures to have an extremely powerful master. The demon ancestor, the three pure ones, Zhuanti, Taoist Mingi, Jade Pool. These people were not to be trifled with. Snatching the connate numinous treasures from them was simply despairing. Especially the four connate numinous treasures, the Qingping sword, the three precious jade rui scepter, the coiling dragon scepter, and the golden lotus of merit. It was completely impossible to snatch them. The first three were the sacred artifacts of the three pure ones, and the last was the supreme treasure of the Western sect. If they were touched, even the saints would go crazy. As for the rest, he could plan. I don't have the ability to get their main bodies, but I can give a try to get a wisp of their connate origin. After thinking carefully for a while, Fengzichen thought of a possibility. What the green lotus of creation wanted to devour was nothing more than their connate origin to strengthen its connate origin and achieve the goal of promotion. Since it wanted the connate origin, it would be thick-skinned to ask for a wisp. Although the effect of doing so was countless times worse than devouring a complete connate numinous treasure. However, there was still a possibility. It was not as hopeless as before. When Fengzichen gathered the connate five-element flags, the connate origins of the four lotus platforms, and the pure white lotus in his hand, he might be able to let the green lotus of creation devour it. It might be able to restore it to a connate numinous treasure. That was enough. It might not be a good thing to restore it to a chaos numinous treasure. A few days later, Xianqing suddenly came to the Eight Visions Palace and asked the Grand Pure One for a wisp of the connate origin of the floating flame flag. Since he was putting on an act, he naturally had to go all out. The green lotus of creation was with Xianqing, not Fengzichen. Why do you want the connate origin of the floating flame flag? In the Eight Visions Palace, the Grand Pure One asked curiously. If Xianqing asked for the floating flame flag, he would not be puzzled. However, what was a wisp of connate origin? Even a saint could not deduce something that involved a chaos numinous treasure. I accidentally discovered that the connate numinous treasure transformed from the remnant body of the chaos green lotus can promote the advancement of the green lotus of creation. Therefore, I came to ask for a wisp of connate origin from you. There was nothing to hide about this, and it could not be hidden. When the green lotus of creation was born, all karma would appear. At that time, nothing could be hidden. Hiding it from the three pure ones now was to bury a mine for the future. Therefore, Xianqing told the truth. It should be your good fortune. After listening to Xianqing's description, the Grand Pure One was silent for a long time before he said, the green lotus of creation had been in the hands of the three of them for some years. However, no matter how they studied it, they could not discover the secret within. It had only been given to Xianqing for a short while, but he had discovered the secret within. Wasn't that his good fortune? It's a pity that you're too late. I just gave the floating flame flag to your junior brother. Even if I wanted to give it to you, I can't. The Grand Pure One shook his head and smiled. That's okay. Where is junior brother? I'll use other treasures to exchange with him. Xianqing said nonchalantly. Chapter 336. It's just a small matter. You can discuss it among yourselves. There's no need to bother me. The Grand Pure One waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and said impatiently, it was better for the elders not to interfere in the matters of the younger generation. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. The mirror of primordial beginning was right in front of him. The Grand Pure One would understand this principle. All right, then I'll take my leave. With that, Xianqing bowed to the Grand Pure One and turned to leave the Eight Visions Palace. Good friend, I need your help with something. In Yi City, Feng Zichen suddenly said to Yong, what is it? Your Majesty, just say it. I'll do my best. Yong was a little surprised that Feng Zichen wanted to ask him for help. It's not a big deal. I have a good friend, your eldest senior martial brother, Daoist Xianqing, the Nine Heavens Celestial Lord. He wants to ask for a wisp of the floating flame flag's connate origin from you. But he's not familiar with you, so he asked me to help. In order to save trouble, Feng Zichen did not let Xianqing come forward. He directly talked to him himself. It's just a small matter. Senior brother can just say it. There's no need to trouble your Majesty. With that, Yong took out the floating flame flag and pulled out a wisp of connate origin from it. Is this enough? Yong asked as he handed the connate origin to Feng Zichen. It seemed that if Feng Zichen said it was not enough, he would immediately pull out another wisp. Enough, it's enough. Seeing this, Feng Zichen hurriedly said. He could not let him continue. After losing a wisp of connate origin, the connate spirit light on the floating flame flag had dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. If he lost another wisp of origin, it would most likely hurt the foundation of the floating flame flag, causing his level to drop. It was not worth it. Yong, take this mass of merit chi. Xianqing said that as his senior brother, he can't let his junior brother suffer. Feng Zichen took the pre-world essence, then took out a sphere of black and yellow natural virtues and handed it to Yong with a smile. Not to mention his relationship with the Yong family, even Xianqing, as his senior, could not let him suffer. Otherwise, not only would it ruin the relationship between fellow disciples, it would also be bad for the reputation of the sect if word got out. Therefore, the merit that Feng Zichen gave to Yong was definitely more valuable than the innate origin. Anyway, what Xianqing lacked the most now was merit points. He didn't care about the extra 1 or 2 points. Virtue was created by the source energy of the world. It contained all sorts of mysteries and could be said to be an omnipotent treasure. It was extremely precious. Using it to offset the losses of the Yong family was the best choice. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Nodding, Yong didn't stand on ceremony and accepted the merit points. Okay, this matter is over. I should also go to the Wu tribe and ask Ancestor of Sorcerer Dijiang to help me set up the teleportation formation in Untainted Land. I'll have to trouble you to set up Xanadu and communicate with the Yu family. With the innate origin in hand, Feng Zichen brought the topic back to his original purpose. Without the teleportation formation, even if Xanadu was really set up, no one would come. Therefore, setting up the teleportation formation was especially important. And among the people that Feng Zichen knew, only ancestor of sorcerer Di Jiang had the ability to set up the teleportation formation in Untainted Land. As the master of space and the leader of the Wu tribe, in Untainted Land, Di Jiang had an advantage that even the sages could not match. If he were to set up the teleportation formation in Untainted Land, it would not be difficult. Okay, I've wasted a lot of time. I'll leave now. With that, Feng Zichen's figure flashed and disappeared in front of Yang. See you off, Your Majesty. Yang murmured softly, then turned and left to gather people. After leaving E-City, Feng Zichen first handed a wisp of the connate origin of the floating flame flag to Xianqing. Then he took out the sorcerer token and went directly to the Pango Hall. On the other side, after Xianqing took the connate origin, he flew straight to Kunlun Mountain. There was the central Wuji apricot yellow flag, which was in the hands of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. According to what Feng Zichen knew, the connate 5-element flags each had their own masters and were in the hands of 5 great divine abilities. The southern floating flame flag was in the hands of the Grand Pure One. The central Wuji apricot yellow flag was in the hands of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. The eastern green treasure lotus flag was in the hands of Saint Jiayin, and the northern mystic essence water control flag was in the hands of Taoist Mingyi. Feng Zichen was confident that he could get a wisp of the connate origin from each of the 4 flags. Only the western white cloud-bound flag was in the hands of Tao ancestor Hongjun, or the Jade Pool Golden Mother. He was not confident that he could get it. Ever since the Tao ancestor merged with the Tao, the purple cloud palace had been hidden in the depths of the chaos beyond the heavens. Only saints could see it. Feng Zichen was just Daoyuo Jingxian. He did not have the ability to go to the chaos beyond the heavens to find the purple cloud palace. If he could not see it, how could he exchange it? On the other hand, he was confident that he could get their connate origin from the square lotus platform. The pure white lotus was in his hands. He could get as much connate origin as he wanted. And back then in the Archean ruins, the black lotus of destruction had a lotus seed that was born from its origin and was snatched by him. In this way, the connate origin of the black lotus of destruction was already in his hands. As for the connate origin of the red lotus of hellfire, when Huda turned into reincarnation, he could plan a little and exchange it with the connate origin of the Xianyuan water control flag from Taoist Mingyi. The 12th grade golden lotus of virtue was the most precious treasure of the Western sect. It was very precious to him to receive the 2 saints' Yuanti, and could not be easily touched. It was simply impossible to separate a wisp of congenital origin from him. However, these were not problems for Xianqing. One had to know that Xianqing was a spiritual supremacy, the master of the spirit clan recognized by heaven and earth. He controlled everything in the spirit clan. The main body of Saint Juanti was the first Bodhi tree in heaven and earth. He was also considered to be from the spirit clan. Over the years, the spirit clan's situation in the primordial world had become more and more difficult. There was not even a Daoyuo Jingxian in the clan. They were almost at the bottom of the primordial world. But even so, Saint Juanti did not appear to help. It was as if he could not see the situation of the spirit clan at all. Speaking of which, the spirit clan's ending today was not unrelated to Saint Juanti. There was a limit to the luck in heaven and earth. If someone gained a point, there would naturally be someone who lost a point. When Saint Juanti attained the Tao, most of the luck of the spirit clan fell on him. The luck of the rest of the clansmen naturally decreased accordingly. Originally, after Taoist Juanti became a saint, he should have vigorously developed the spirit clan and made the spirit clan prosper. He could gather more luck and let the clansmen benefit together. You can't just kick others away after you've gotten the benefits, right? Then would he be worthy of the clansmen's efforts? How could he still have the face to stay in the primordial world? But who would have thought that Taoist Juanti would really do that? After he became a saint, he did not care about the life and death of the spirit clan at all. Instead, he focused on the Western sect. More than half of the luck of the spirit clan fell on the Western sect. Chapter 337. The spirit race's fortune had already fallen greatly after they had ascended to the Tao. After this incident, their fortune was almost completely depleted, and they were on the verge of complete decline. It could be said that there was a huge karma between Taoist Kundi and the Spirit Clan. Moreover, the more suffering the Spirit Clan suffered, the more miserable their outcome was, the greater the karma. If the Spirit Clan was exterminated, it would be fine. Everything would be over when people died. All the karma would be settled. Taoist Kundi could rest easy, just like ancestor Hong Yin. However, the current situation was that although the Spirit Clan's outcome was miserable, they had been living half-dead. As a result, the karma between Taoist Kundi and the Spirit Clan grew as time passed. Of course, this was nothing to Taoist Kundi. The karma between him and the Spirit Clan was like a loan. The Spirit Clan was his creditor. There were two ways to repay money. One was to take the initiative to repay it, and the other was to wait for the creditor to ask for it. With Taoist Kundi's personality, he naturally would not take the initiative to settle the karma with the Spirit Clan. After all, the price was too great. It was enough to shake the foundation of the Western sect. The situation of the Spirit Clan was more complicated. Their clansmen were scattered all over the primordial world, and their cultivation levels were not high. This meant that the Spirit Clan lacked cohesion, and did not have a powerful person to be in charge. This meant that no one could represent the Spirit Clan to go to Mount Meru and find Taoist Kundi to settle the karma. Taoist Kundi was happy. No one from the Spirit Clan came to Mount Meru to settle the karma with him. He could not wait for no one to come. In this way, he could sit back and relax. If Taoist Kundi did not return it, no one from the Spirit Clan would come to ask for it. This karma was put aside. As time passed, this karma was gradually forgotten by the world. Even the Spirit Clan gradually forgot about this matter. After all, Taoist Kundi's background was considered a secret in the primordial world. Very few people knew about it. It was far from the three pure ones. Everyone in the primordial world knew about his background. After a long time, under Taoist Kundi's intentional blockade, it was normal for the Spirit Clan to gradually forget about this matter. However, being forgotten by the world did not mean that this matter did not exist. Now, Xianqing had established the Qi Dan lineage and received the support of tens of thousands of spirits. He was conferred the title by the heavens and earth, and became the leader of the spirit race. He was the ruler of the spirit race. In other words, Xianqing was the leader of the Ling clan. If he went to Mount Meru to settle the karma, Taoist Kundi would have to pay him back. Where there is a cause, there is an effect. And once there was karma, it had to be repaid. This was an iron law in the primordial world. Even saints could not violate it. Either Taoist Zhuan-Ti returned the karma or Xianqing died. Other than these two paths, there was no other way to end the karma. Because of the karma, Taoist Kundi had no chance of attacking Xianqing. If he did not want to return the karma, he could only hope that he had died by accident. With a thought, karma was born. Just as the thought of settling the karma with Mount Meru surfaced in Xianqing's mind, Taoist Zhuan-Ti sensed it. Not good. Disaster is coming. Taoist Zhuan-Ti, who was comprehending the great Tao beside the 8 treasures merit pool, suddenly shouted. Black lines suddenly appeared on his body, blocking his true soul. In just an instant, his connection with the world was weakened several times. At the same time, Taoist Zhuan-Ti also discovered that the heaven-earth rules that were usually clearly visible seemed to be covered by a layer of gauze and gradually became blurry. After trying to cultivate, the great Tao of heaven and earth also became obscure and difficult to understand. If he wanted to comprehend it, he needed to put in hundreds of times more effort than before. Everything seemed to have returned to before he achieved the Tao. Karma lock. Junior brother, what happened? How did you form such a huge karma with someone? You actually attracted the karma lock. Taoist Jieyin, who was at the side, could not help but frown and ask when he saw Taoist Zhuan-Ti's abnormality. His tone was filled with confusion. Clearly he recognized the origin of the item. As the saying goes, karma is a cycle and retribution is not good. The retribution of good and evil follows like a shadow. Even the people of the celestial sect of wonders had to think of a way to resolve the karma with others. Not to mention the Western sect, which valued karma the most. The black line was the karma line, the manifestation of the Tao of karma in the world. It was tangible but intangible. It could not be touched or touched. It did not harm the human body, soul, or true spirit. It did not harm people at all. There was only one use, and that was to isolate the great Tao of heaven and earth. The karma line wrapped around one's body was like a connate true spirit that was blinded. It was completely isolated from the world, and could not comprehend the great Tao, let alone cultivate. In other words, if Taoist Yuan-Ti could not resolve this karma, it would be difficult for his cultivation to improve in the future. This is the karma of the spirit race. I didn't expect that he would come looking for me when I was about to forget about this matter. What a disaster. With a thought, Taoist Yuan-Ti knew the reason for this matter and could not help but sigh. This karma was not easy to resolve. Over the years, the spirit race had suffered a lot and suffered a lot. With the accumulation of endless resentment, the karma was far from what it was in the past. Junior brother, I've troubled you. At this moment, Taoist Jie-in said apologetically. If not for the Western sect, Taoist Yuan-Ti would not have formed such a huge karma with the spirit race. This was all because he was dragged down by the Western sect. Senior brother, you don't have to do this. This is junior brother's own choice. You can't blame others. Because he had planted it himself, no matter what kind of bitter fruit it produced, he had to grit his teeth and swallow it. Dao Yuo had no regrets. Saints had no regrets. Wait and see. That young celestial venerable of the Xian sect is coming. In this world, only Xianqing could trigger the karma of the spirit race. Taoist Yuan-Ti naturally knew who was coming. In just a few days, Xianqing asked for a wisp of the connate origin of the central Wuji apricot yellow flag from the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. After that, he rode a cloud and rushed to the west. Uncle Master, Xianqing has something to see you about. Outside Mount Meru, Xianqing shouted loudly. Come in. A golden rainbow bridge flew out of Mount Meru and landed under Xianqing's feet. Thank you, Uncle Master. After bowing, Xianqing stepped onto the rainbow bridge. Uncle Master, Xianqing came today to ask for a favor. After entering the mountain and arriving in front of Taoist Yuan-Ti, Xianqing did not bother with formalities and said directly, What is it? Knowing that Xianqing came with a certain purpose, how could Taoist Yuan-Ti be happy? I would like to request for the golden lotus of merit. I hope Uncle Master can fulfill my request. The square lotus platform was different from the connate five-element flags. They were not as simple as connate spirit treasures. They were also connate spirit roots. Therefore, Xianqing only needed one lotus seed to obtain the connate origin of the golden lotus of merit. There was no need to directly extract the connate origin like the connate five-element flags. In that case, if the foundation of the golden lotus of merit was shaken, Taoist Yuan-Ti would fall out with him on the spot. Chapter 338. Golden Lotus Seed? Wait a moment. I'll pluck one for you. Hearing Xianqing's words, Taoist Kundi was stunned at first. Then he heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that Xianqing would make an excessive request. He did not expect him to only ask for a golden lotus seed. Although the golden lotus seed was precious, it was much less than what he had expected. It was still within his tolerance range. Thank you, Uncle Master. Xianqing was not surprised that Taoist Kundi agreed so readily. A golden lotus seed was not enough to hurt the Western sect. At most, it would hurt for a while. It was nothing. Walking into the 8 treasure pool, Taoist Kundi came to the 12th grade golden lotus of merit and plucked a lotus seed with a pained expression. The two saints Kundi were very concerned about the golden lotus of merit. Ever since they obtained this treasure, they had raised it in the 8 treasure pool of merit and took care of it carefully. They could not even bear to pluck the lotus seeds that it produced because they were afraid of damaging its origin. This meant that the lotus seeds produced by the golden lotus of merit were all first-generation lotus seeds. Each of them had experienced countless fortunes and were the seeds of superior-grade connate numinous treasures. If nothing went wrong, the connate lotus flower produced by the golden lotus seed would be a superior-grade connate numinous treasure, and a superior-grade connate spirit root at the same time. The 12th grade golden lotus of merit had only produced 3 lotus seeds in the Western sect for millions of years. They all contained great fortunes and were rare treasures in the world. One could imagine how precious they were. Now that he had to give one to Xianqing, Daoist Kundi was naturally heartbroken. However, he had to say it and try his best to look happy. This was very uncomfortable and depressing. Martial nephew Xianqing, keep this golden lotus seed well. After leaving the 8 treasure pool of merit, Daoist Kundi handed the golden lotus seed to Xianqing with a smile. He did not show any reluctance in his heart. Thank you, Uncle Master. After accepting the golden lotus seed, Xianqing thanked him again. Then the two of them chatted for a while. Xianqing, do you have anything else? After a while, seeing that Xianqing did not mention the spirit clan, Daoist Kundi could not help but signal that Xianqing could leave if he did not talk about it. Uncle Master, Xianqing has another request. Then Xianqing stood up. What is it? Tell me about it. Knowing that the highlight of the day was coming, Daoist Kundi could not help but perk up. Uncle Master, you know that I am now a spiritual paragon of the spirit race. I bear the fate of the spirit race. However, the world is difficult, and the spirit race has caused so much trouble that they have almost become food for the other races. It is truly tragic. Therefore, I beseech Uncle Master to be merciful and protect the cultivators of the Ling clan in the world. Let them avoid the pain of being devoured by the myriad races. After all, they came under the banner of the spirit race. If they did nothing and only sought benefits for themselves, Xianqing would not be able to get over it. Therefore, he said that he told Daoist Kundi about the spirit clan, and begged him to protect the spirit clan. As for whether it would succeed or not, Xianqing could not guarantee it. He had tried his best. That's true. The poor way is somewhat related to the spirit race. Now that the spirit race is in dire straits, we can't just sit by and watch. After hearing Xianqing's words, Daoist Kundi said pretentiously. Seeing this, Xianqing could not help but be speechless. At this time he was still pretending, as if the spirit race's ending today had nothing to do with him. However, no matter what Daoist Kundi said, he had agreed to protect the spirit race. Xianqing was worthy of the spirit race. Then, on behalf of the spirit race, I thank Uncle Master for his great kindness. Retracting his thoughts, Xianqing hurriedly put on a grateful expression, and thanked Daoist Kundi. Life was like a play. Who was not an actor? It depended on whose acting skills were better. Yes. Daoist Kundi nodded and said. From today onwards, the cultivators of the primordial world are not allowed to slaughter the immortals of the spirit race for no reason. If there is a violation, don't blame the poor way for being heartless. That voice was so loud that it resounded throughout the primordial world, so that all living beings could hear it clearly. It's a saint. Saint Kundi of the Western sect. In Daoist Kundi's words, he clearly did not mention his origin. However, in the ears of all living beings, there seemed to be someone whispering softly, constantly telling the origin of the owner of the voice, causing them to shout out involuntarily. Then Saint Kundi seemed to feel that just a warning was not enough. He suddenly took out the wonderful 7 treasures tree and brushed it towards the sky. Suddenly, a 7-colored light appeared. It was boundless, as if it covered the sky and the sun, enveloping the primordial world. Whoosh! The 7-colored light swept past, and countless sinful cultivators were instantly turned into ashes. These cultivators had varying cultivation bases, ranging from heaven immortals to primordial immortals. They all had one thing in common, and that was that their cultivation levels were not obtained by refining Khanate Qi. They were obtained by devouring spirit race cultivators. Today Daoist Kundi had shown his divinity, and it was their retribution. Devouring living beings for cultivation was not the right path, and it would definitely be hated by the heavenly Tao. If there was no shocking opportunity, it would be difficult to become Daoyuo Jingxian in this life. Therefore, this time, Daoist Kundi attacked and Daoyuo Jingxian was not involved. On this day, with Daoist Kundi's help, the destiny of the spirit race soared and 9 Tai Jingxian were born in a row. Moreover, with the saint as a backer, no one in the primordial world looked down on the spirit race anymore. Today, countless spirit race members cheered and were so excited that they could not control themselves. They were all grateful for the kindness of the saint. Uncle Master is merciful. Xianqing is impressed. On Mount Meru, Xianqing hurriedly expressed his admiration for Taoist Kundi when he saw this scene. Although he was not protecting the entire spirit race, but only the immortals of the spirit race, Xianqing was already very satisfied. It was not a day or two that the living beings of the primordial world had gathered spirit herbs to cultivate. It had long become a habit. If they were suddenly not allowed to gather spirit herbs, they would probably explode. If the mighty power of the human Tao descended under the anger of the crowd, even a saint would not end well. Therefore, protecting the immortals of the spirit race was already Taoist Kundi's limit. Since Taoist Kundi had already done so much, what was there for Xianqing to be dissatisfied with? As the destiny of the spirit race flowed back, the karma threads on Taoist Kundi's body also began to fade and disappear from his body. In an instant, the haze that enveloped his heart dissipated. The feeling of being one with heaven and earth, and the myriad Tao returned to him. His cultivation was no longer restricted. It was as if karma had been settled. Of course, this was only Taoist Kundi's illusion. Although the karma threads had retreated, karma had not been settled. The spirit race had suffered a calamity for countless years and lived in fear all day. Countless clansmen had died. How could such karma be repaid so easily? Now, it was only temporarily suppressed. If he wanted to completely settle it, he had to see Taoist Kundi's performance in the future. Chapter 339. Uncle Master, I heard that the green lotus flag is in the Western sect. I wonder. The golden lotus seed was already in his hands. Next was the congenital origin of the green lotus flag. If he got both, his trip would be complete. Why? One golden lotus seed is not enough. Are you planning to get the green lotus flag? At this moment, Taoist Kundi was already a little unhappy. This Xianqing was too much. In the entire Western sect, there were only two congenital spiritual treasures that could hold the fort. The 12th grade virtuous golden lotus, and the green lotus flag. This was the most precious treasure of the Western sect. It could also be said to be Kundi's favorite. Now the golden lotus seed had been given to Xianqing, but he was still not satisfied. He even dared to ask about the green lotus flag. What was he doing? Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted with the karma of the spirit tribe? The Western sect was not easy to bully. The saint was not to be trifled with. If he was really angered, the karma of the spirit tribe and the first disciple of the third generation of the Xian sect were nothing. When the saint was enraged, the heavens and the earth changed their color. The laws of nature became easier, and countless small worlds were destroyed. An invisible force spread out and pressed toward Xianqing, making him unable to breathe. Danger, extreme danger. Under the cover of Taoist Kundi's aura, he was like a small boat in the sea. As the waves hit him, he could sink at any time. He could not control his life and death at all. At this moment, the long-lost sense of danger appeared in Xianqing's heart again. It made him tremble with fear. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. Taoist Kundi only needed a thought to kill him. In a fatal crisis, Xianqing could not care too much. He suddenly shouted at Taoist Kundi, "Uncle Master, don't be angry. I just want a wisp of the congenital origin. It can't hurt the foundation of the green lotus flag. Moreover, I'm giving you something in exchange." Exchange. I'm not taking it for free. Xianqing did not expect Taoist Kundi to be so agitated. It seemed that he had underestimated the status of the green lotus flag in the Western sect. Exchange? What are you giving me in exchange? The green lotus flag is one of the sect-guarding treasures of the Western sect, and it suppresses the karmic luck of the Western sect. It's of great importance, so how can it be damaged so easily? Perhaps sensing that his reaction was a little too extreme, Taoist Kundi retracted his aura, and said unhappily, "Martial uncle, look." Smiling, Xianqing took out a white lotus seed and placed it in front of Taoist Kundi. "This is the seed of the pure white lotus." Seeing this lotus seed, Taoist Kundi's expression changed. He was no longer as resolute as before. Instead, he was a little tempted. The 4 lotus thrones came from the same source and complemented each other. If the virtuous golden lotus were to swallow this lotus seed, it would benefit it greatly. Although the green lotus flag was precious, it was still inferior to the virtuous golden lotus. Moreover, losing a wisp of innate source wouldn't do any harm to the green lotus flag. At most, it would be weakened for a while. With that thought in mind, Taoist Juanti spoke. Forget it. You're a junior after all. Poor Wei can't refuse your request. Take this wisp of innate source. Pretending to be helpless, Taoist Kundi waved his hand and took out a wisp of innate source from the green lotus flag and threw it to Xianqing. Thank you, martial uncle. Xianqing replied excitedly after receiving the innate source. In this way, his purpose of coming to the Western sect had been completely achieved. Martial uncle, I still have something to do. I won't disturb you here. Since his purpose had been achieved, there was no point for Xianqing to stay here. Thus he bid farewell. Go. The Western sect is poor. I won't keep you. Taoist Kundi didn't ask him to stay. He waved his hand a few times and urged Xianqing to leave quickly. Then Xianqing will take his leave. After bowing politely, Xianqing turned and left Mount Meru. Now, apart from the red lotus of hellfire, he had obtained all the lotus seeds of the 4 lotus thrones. Apart from the northern Xianyuan water control flag and the western white cloud-bound flag, he had also obtained the innate source of the innate 5-element flags. Not to mention the western white cloud-bound flag, the northern Xianyuan water control flag, and the 12th grade red lotus of hellfire were both in the hands of Taoist Mingi. This required a good plan. The reincarnation of the earth was his only chance at the moment. If he missed it, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. Just as Xianqing left Mount Meru, the eldritch world changed again. In the hinterland of the sorcerer tribe, in the Pango Hall, ancestral sorcerer Dijiang suddenly revealed his true form. It was a huge beast that was shaped like a yellow sack, red like a pillfire, with 6 legs and 4 wings. It was a faceless beast. Dijiang floated in the air and kept flapping his wings. And as he waved his hand, an invisible force spread out, spreading to the boundless void and shaking the heavens and the universe. First, layers of ripples appeared in the void. Then it began to tremble. The fluctuations became stronger and stronger, and the range became larger and larger. In just a moment, it affected the entire eldritch world. At this moment, under the power of ancestral sorcerer Dijiang, the boundless void that enveloped the entire eldritch world underwent an inexplicable change. Teleportation array, set up. An ancient Tao sound came out of Dijiang's mouth. With an unparalleled Tao rhythm, it shook the Tao of heaven and earth and alarmed the long river of time. It reverberated in the eldritch world. For a moment, it seemed that the world was silent. Only Dijiang's voice echoed between heaven and earth, and also echoed in the past and future. Rumble. On the eldritch world, the space nodes suddenly began to distort. The great Tao of space manifested, and endless laws descended. The power of the void was vast and mighty, and mysterious runes were derived. Those were space runes, the most basic runes to form a teleportation array. The runes were arranged in the node, forming array patterns. They intertwined and connected with each other, forming an inexplicable array. In this way, the teleportation array was completed. Today in the Pango Hall, Dijiang used the space node as a coordinate and performed a supreme divine power to shake the Tao of space. Countless teleportation arrays were set up on the eldritch world. This move benefited all living beings, and it could be said to be boundless merit. What? Dijiang, this is... Dijiang's voice was too loud, and it resounded in the universe in countless space-time. As a result, all the powerful beings in the eldritch world were awakened. Even those powerful beings who lived in seclusion in the depths of space-time and had not appeared in the world since the Tao ancestors' preaching were awakened. They all looked over in surprise and bewilderment. Hiss. Dijiang's strength is so strong. Sensing the changes in the eldritch world, all the powerful beings were deeply shocked. How incredible was it to set up countless teleportation arrays for the eldritch world with his own strength? Just how shocking was the strength required to do so? They asked themselves that they would never be able to do it. Perhaps only a saint had such power. But Dijiang had done it. At this moment, Dijiang's strength shocked the world. Chapter 340. After receiving the true teachings of the path of gods and demons from Feng Zichen, The 12 ancestral sorcerers could be said to have obtained great benefits. Over the years, their cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. They were only half a step away from the supreme primordial chaos Tao realm. Moreover, they were not like Feng Zichen, who used the primordial chaos Tao diagram to reverse engineer Panga's Tao body. Instead, they dug deep into their own potential and fully exerted their advantages. With their own laws as a guide, they continued to deduce and refine a primordial chaos Tao body that belonged to them. The 12 ancestral sorcerers were formed from Panga's blood essence. Each of them had divine abilities and unlimited potential. Of course, this was the best choice. However, Feng Zichen was different. He was a postnatal life form, and his potential was limited. If he could not reverse to Panga's Tao body, he would probably never have the chance to become Daoyuo Jingxian in this lifetime. It had to be said that this world was full of injustice. The starting point of the Khanate Godfiend was the end point of most postnatal life forms. In other words, from the moment the Khanate Godfiend was born, their achievements were the result of a lifetime of hard work by postnatal life forms. Zai, the biological son of heaven and earth, was not an exaggeration. Thank you, ancestral sorcerer. In Panga's hall, Feng Zichen thanked Dijiang, who had recovered his Tao body. Phew. You're welcome, sorcerer. This matter is also beneficial to the sorcerer clan. Even if it wasn't your request, I would have done it. After taking a few breaths, Dijiang said tiredly. Obviously, he had consumed a lot of energy. Although Dijiang's strength was powerful, he was not the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian after all. Setting up teleportation arrays for the primordial chaos was such a big thing. If he could complete such a big thing without any cost. In the primordial chaos, who could be his opponent? Therefore, the price Dijiang paid was not small. After this matter was completed, his magic power was almost drained. This was not a small matter. The magic power that Daoyuo Jingxian's body could hold was almost comparable to the total spiritual energy contained in an upper-class world. Not to mention a quasi-saint like Di Jun. Without tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years, he might not be able to recover. Rumble. Above the sky, a brilliant golden light appeared. It was incomparably dazzling and emitted an auspicious and holy aura. The Xianhuang merit was here. Dijiang's actions had connected the east and south of the primordial world. Billions of living beings had benefited from it. It was a great merit. Therefore, the heavenly Tao bestowed merit as a reward. However, Dijiang was in the Pango Hall. The heavenly Tao searched the entire primordial world, but did not find any traces of him. As such, the heavenly Tao had no choice but to insert merit into the destiny of the Magi to continue the destiny of the Magi. Ancestral Witch, this matter is over. Zichen will not disturb your rest. I'll take my leave for now. This time, Dijiang's losses were too great. He had to go into closed-door cultivation to recuperate. Feng Zichen staying here would be somewhat of a hindrance. Moreover, he had already achieved his goal, so there was no point in staying any longer. Then Magus, take care. Dijiang can't get up to send you off in this state. Dijiang forced a smile and said. The exhaustion in his tone could no longer be concealed. Ancestral Witch, just rest at ease and recuperate. Zichen will go now. After bowing to Dijiang, Feng Zichen formed a Tao seal and disappeared from the Pango Hall. After leaving the Pango Hall, Feng Zichen casually broke through the void and stepped in, rushing into the distance. However, his destination was not the human race but the netherworld Blood Sea. When he was in the Pango Hall, he had already heard that the Lady of Earth had gone out to travel. Originally, that was nothing. The great mystical abilities of the primordial world had stayed in the Tao field for a long time. It was common for them to go out and travel. They either relaxed, comprehended the great Tao, or searched for opportunities. There was nothing to be surprised about. However, it was different today. After hearing that the Lady of Earth had gone out to travel, the heaven-splitting merit that had been silent in the depths of Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness suddenly moved. A bright light burst out like a small sun, completely illuminating his sea of consciousness. Endless Tao runes surged out of the heaven-splitting merit and kept attacking Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness, disturbing him until he was dizzy. After a long time, he barely suppressed it. Moreover, The heaven-splitting merit that had returned to the depths of his sea of consciousness did not calm down. Instead, it trembled violently, as if it was about to fly out of his body and urge him to find the Lady of Earth. In an instant, Feng Zichen, who was familiar with the process of the primordial world, knew what had happened. The Lady of Earth was going to reincarnate. That was a major event that was enough to shock the primordial world, and also a huge change that would affect the future of the primordial world. After that, the fate of the countless living beings in the primordial world would change. Heaven and earth would also take a step closer and become more perfect. And that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that from then on, the situation of the strong magi and the weak demons had been completely changed. The magi, who were almost invincible in the primordial world, had lost their greatest trump card. Facing the increasingly powerful demons, they no longer had an overwhelming advantage. The strength of the magi and demons gradually became equal. The reincarnation of the Lady of Earth was the biggest change since the creation of the primordial world. Its influence was endless and far-reaching. The situation of the primordial world had been changed because of it. Many changes in the future had also occurred because of it. That change was engraved in the history of the primordial world. It could not be changed, erased, or hidden. Countless descendants knew about it and remembered it. Therefore, after bidding farewell to Dijiang, Feng Zichen rushed to the netherworld Blood Sea. He wanted to witness that historic moment with his own eyes. As for why he wanted to go to the netherworld Blood Sea and not elsewhere, that was because the primordial world was boundless. Who knew where the Lady of Earth had traveled to? Rashly looking for her was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. It would be uncomfortable if others did not find her and missed the time to reincarnate. It was better to go to the netherworld Blood Sea and wait. Anyway, that was the end of the Lady of Earth and where the 6 paths of reincarnation were. No matter where the Lady of Earth was now, she had to come here in the end. The Blood Sea was the same as before. It had never changed. Dark red blood gushed out from the wound. From time to time, waves of blood rolled up the remnant souls that floated over and sank into the sea with them. How disgusting! Looking at the Blood Sea in front of him, Feng Zichen could not hide his disgust. The Blood Sea was a filthy place. This was the place where the evil aura of the primordial world gathered, and it was also the home of the dead. All the souls of the dead would be summoned by the Blood Sea and come here, wandering around, waiting for the birth of reincarnation. It was also because of this that the resentment of the souls of the dead gathered together spontaneously. A thick layer of black clouds formed above the Blood Sea and did not dissipate all year round. Evil aura, resentment, the evil aura gathered in the Blood Sea. The living beings living here would definitely become bloodthirsty and murderous under its influence. It was not without reason that the great divine abilities of the primordial world hated the Blood Sea. Who would like a bloodthirsty and murderous person? Chapter 341. Even ordinary people would inevitably be affected by the filthy aura after staying in the Blood Sea for a long time, causing their personality to change drastically. It was fine if it was mild. At most, they would become bloodthirsty and murderous like the living beings of the Blood Sea. If it was serious, the evil aura would enter their bodies and they would lose their minds. They would become puppets that only knew how to kill, no different from a dead person. No, it was worse than a dead person. It was a fate worse than death. In terms of origin, the netherworld Blood Sea was formed from Panga's navel. It is indeed the top holy land of the primordial world, and has countless opportunities. Unfortunately, apart from the Khanate God-fiend Taoist Mingi, who was born in the Blood Sea, no one else has the fortune to enjoy such a place of creation. Looking at the endless Blood Sea in front of him and thinking about its origin, Feng Zichen sighed. As a part of Panga's body, the Blood Sea had endless opportunities. It was not inferior to the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands of the primordial world. It was a top-notch cultivation holy land. The 12th grade karmic fire red lotus, the northern mystic essence water control flag, and the 2 Khanate killing swords, the 4 supreme grade Khanate numinous treasures, were all born in the Blood Sea. From this, it could be seen how rich the origin of the Blood Sea was. However, Even so, no great mystical abilities of the primordial world came to stay here. It was not that they were afraid of Taoist Mingi, but that this place was really unapproachable. The Blood Sea was filthy. If one could not adapt to the environment here, they would enter rashly to cultivate. Not to mention obtaining results, even not being injured by it was already the greatest gain. Therefore, the attributes of the Blood Sea were unique and clashed with other great mystical abilities. As a result, no one came to set up a Dao field here, causing the huge Blood Sea to fall into the hands of Taoist Mingi. Otherwise, how could Taoist Mingi alone guard the Blood Sea, a top holy land of the primordial world? Even if the three pure ones were invincible, they did not occupy Kunlun Mountain alone. They only occupied the best territory of Kunlun Mountain, East Kunlun. They gave the remaining places like West Kunlun to the other great mystical abilities. Even the three pure ones were like that, let alone them. The reason why Mingi Taoist could monopolize the Blood Sea was not because of his abilities, but because of his geographical advantage. If the Blood Sea was like the other holy lands where everyone could go, it would have been crowded to the brim with the creation it contained. It was already considered good that the Netherworld River could occupy a piece of the Blood Sea. It's rare for me to come to the Blood Sea. If I don't go in and take a look, wouldn't it be a pity? With a thought, Feng Zichen decided to explore the Blood Sea. At that moment, without hesitation, Hongming's Dao light rose from his body. Then he cast a Dao spell and set off a wave of blood. He walked into the Sea of Blood. The Nether Blood Sea was a famous dangerous place in the untainted land. Inside, waves of blood were rolling. Fish and prawns were dead, and birds and insects were absent. All the evil chi of heaven and earth had gathered here. Even if an ordinary Tai Jingxian were to accidentally fall into it, they would be bewitched by the evil aura within a few days and become a puppet. If a golden immortal were to fall into it, he would be turned into a pool of filthy blood and become a part of the Sea of Blood. The danger of the Blood Sea was terrifying. However, Feng Zichen was a Daoyuo Jingxian. No matter how fierce the Blood Sea was, it could not hurt him at all. It was the filthy aura that gathered from all over the untainted land that swayed in front of him from time to time. It was unavoidable that it would annoy him. A ray of purple light bloomed from Feng Zichen's body. It was purple and lustrous, like flowing water. It was magical and abnormally gorgeous. It expelled all the filthy aura around him and purified the blood water. In the blink of an eye, the evil aura within 1,000 feet of Feng Zichen disappeared. The blood water also turned from dark red to bright red. It was sparkling and extraordinary. This magical purple light was not emitted by Feng Zichen, but by the merit of creation. It seemed that even he could not stand the environment of the Blood Sea, and could not help but purify the surroundings. Speaking of which, since Feng Zichen came to the Nether Blood Sea, the merit of creation that had been trembling suddenly stopped trembling and returned to calmness. It was as if the Nether Blood Sea was his destination. This magical scene also made Feng Zichen certain that the merit of creation was indeed related to Hutu. Just as he had guessed before, Pangu had left it for Hutu and sent it out through him. This thing is really not fated with me. Although he had guessed it, Feng Zichen was still a little reluctant after confirming it. That was 10% of the merit of creation. The merit that could create a saint. Who would not like such a treasure? Moreover, this treasure had already been obtained. A cooked duck was about to fly away. No one would feel good. If one did not get it, one would not feel pain. If one got it and lost it again, it would be unbearable. At this moment, Feng Zichen could not help but feel dissatisfied with Pangu. He felt that he was playing with him. Otherwise, why would he give the merit of creation to him instead of directly giving it to Hutu? Greed. The source of all evil. One of the original sins of countless living beings. Under the influence of greed, Feng Zichen's heart was distorted. Under this influence, his face became ferocious and looked extremely ugly. The so-called appearance was born from the heart. This was it. Gains and losses, gains and losses. If one could not see through it, it would be a tribulation. At this moment, Feng Zichen's tribulation had arrived. This was the tribulation of the path. There was no way to avoid it. There was no way to escape. He could only face it calmly. Feng Zichen was still too young. In just a few 100,000 years, he had achieved what others had achieved in tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of years. In addition, his journey had been too smooth, and he had not encountered any major setbacks. It was inevitable that he would be arrogant and willful, causing a flaw to appear in his state of mind. This was a drawback caused by cultivating too quickly. Now, under the dual influence of gains and losses and greed, Feng Zichen's state of mind was completely lost. The drawbacks caused by the cultivation over the years erupted together and turned into a tribulation of the path that suddenly attacked. Tribulation of the path. Tribulation of the path. It was the tribulation of the path, but also the tribulation of the path destruction. After breaking through the tribulation of the path, one's cultivation would improve greatly. This was the tribulation of the path. If one could not survive the tribulation of the path, their path would be shattered and their strength would drop greatly. Although they would not lose Daoyuo's path, it would be difficult for them to improve in the future. In fact, it was almost impossible for them to even retain their original strength. In the tribulation of the path, danger and opportunity coexisted. Whether one could seize the opportunity depended on themselves. One could see that on Feng Zichen's body, wisps of black gas appeared, emitting the smell of decay and eroding his path. This was the aura of the end of everything. Under its power, the universe would be destroyed, the laws would collapse, and the path would disintegrate. It could bring the end to all things and let everything return to its original point, nothing. The tribulation of the path had arrived. At the critical moment, the heaven-splitting merit suddenly shone brightly, lighting up Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness and dispelling all the haze. The aura of the end brought by the tribulation of the path was immediately suppressed. At the same time, with the help of the heaven-splitting merit, Feng Zichen temporarily recovered a trace of clarity. Chapter 342. That was close. Feng Zichen broke out in a cold sweat when he realized the changes in his body. His mind was distracted, and the path calamity was upon him. If he didn't have merit to protect him today, he would be in danger this time. Feng Zichen didn't dare to hesitate. He mobilized all the power he could to suppress the chi of demise in his body. Whoosh! A dazzling sword light descended, slashing toward the chi of demise with an aura that could destroy everything. This was the Khanate sword path. Stars appeared one after another, blossoming with fine radiance. They connected together in the void, turning into a boundless river of stars that surged towards the aura of termination in a mighty manner. As the river of stars surged, it was as if the river of time and space had descended. The void was distorted, and time was disrupted. The past and future appeared together, surging with the power of time and space. In the blink of an eye, the world had changed. The sword light swept out, extremely sharp, and shredded the chi of demise into pieces. The river of stars surged, sweeping up the power of time, and drowning the chi of demise. In an instant, endless time passed. At the same time, the chi of Hongmeng appeared, trying to devour the weakened chi of demise. In the beginning, the world was in a state of nothingness. Nothing existed. It wasn't until the chi of Hongmeng appeared that the world had the concept of existence. It could be said that the chi of Hongmeng was the source of everything. Everything that existed in the world evolved from it. The chi of demise was no exception. It was the power to end the universe, the end of everything, the end of everything. It was also the final form of the chi of Hongmeng. Therefore, the chi of Hongmeng could devour everything. After being weakened by the Khanate sword path and the path of stars, the power of the chi of demise had fallen to the extreme. Facing the chi of Hongmeng, which was like its natural enemy, it was devoured without any resistance. As such, Feng Zichen's crisis was temporarily alleviated. But if the path calamity didn't disappear, the crisis wouldn't be over. The chi of demise would definitely come back and completely destroy Feng Zichen's path. It's all because of greed. After calming down, how could Feng Zichen not know where this Dao tribulation came from? It was clearly caused by his greed for the merit of opening the heavens. Years ago, in the belly of Mount Buzhou, the Hongmeng Dao seal suddenly shattered the Hongmeng heaven-measuring ruler, causing Feng Zichen to commit a heinous crime and be entangled with boundless karma. After that, Panga's will manifested and asked him to give the merit of creation to the fated person to offset the sins he had committed. Feng Zichen managed to keep his life. As for why Panga didn't directly give the merit points to Hutu, Feng Zichen didn't understand at that time. However, after this incident, the Lord of Destiny, who had learned about the merit of splitting open the heavens, saw a hint of something. If Panga directly gave the merit of creation to Hutu, the first thing Hutu would do after obtaining the merit of creation was to integrate it into the luck of the wizard tribe to strengthen the wizard tribe. In this way, wouldn't it be contrary to Panga's original intention? Therefore, he placed the heaven-splitting merit in Feng Zichen's body. On the one hand, he was waiting for the right time. On the other hand, he could also protect Feng Zichen's safety, improve his luck, and help him cultivate so that he could cultivate the tree of world with peace of mind. Did he really think that Feng Zichen had relied on his own ability to obtain countless opportunities since his debut? Although part of it was because of his own ability, it was more because of the influence of the merit of creation. How could a treasure that could allow someone to ascend to the saint position not be extraordinary? I can have today's achievements all because of the favor of the great Taoist priests. It can be said that I am indebted to the great Taoist priests for achieving the Tao. But today, thinking about what he had just thought, Feng Zichen felt extremely ashamed and wanted to find a hole to hide in. It's really greed that gives birth to evil thoughts. The tribulation is born from the heart. The ancients didn't lie to me. After understanding the origin of the Tao tribulation, it was much easier to solve it. This tribulation was born from greed, and it should be destroyed because of greed. After calming down, Feng Zichen silently recited the three enclosures Taoist scripture in his heart. Suddenly, all kinds of enlightenment of the great Tao floated in his heart. An aura like the starry sky was emitted from his body. It was quiet, ancient, and deep. The three enclosures Taoist scripture was a Taoist scripture that existed from the beginning. It was born in the Ziwei star, and had the same origin as the heavenly Tao. It recorded the truth of the stars, the rules of the universe, and the secrets of the origin of heaven and earth. It was also the origin of the stars, the supreme scripture of the primitive age, and also the strongest scripture that Feng Zichen had mastered. The moment the three enclosures Taoist scripture rang, Feng Zichen changed. He became extremely ethereal. His true spirit seemed to have surpassed his physical body and merged with the boundless starry sky. He was incomparably mighty and vast. At this moment, the merit of splitting open the heavens became even more brilliant. The purple brilliance was like flowing water, brushing past Feng Zichen's heart and helping him to gain enlightenment. At the same time, Hongming Daozhong also began to vibrate. The melodious sound of the bell rang. It was incomparably ethereal. When it fell into Feng Zichen's ears, it was like the sound of the great Tao. It was deafening and enlightening, leading him into the Tao realm. At this moment, with the help of these powers, Feng Zichen's state of mind reached an unprecedented peak. It was extremely clear and flawless. With a cold shout, the power of the soul gushed out, and turned into an invisible sword in the air. It slashed fiercely at Feng Zichen's body. Pop! There seemed to be a shattering sound. The greed in Feng Zichen's heart was completely cut off, and the calamity of the Tao also disappeared. Phew! As the calamity of the Tao dissipated, the haze that shrouded Feng Zichen's heart, and the sense of crisis that emerged in his heart also dissipated. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. This was nothing more than surviving a calamity. My state of mind is still not good enough. It seems that I have to settle down for a period of time in my cultivation in the future. I also have to spend more effort in polishing my state of mind, so that what happened today won't happen again in the future. In the end, Feng Zichen sighed with lingering fear. The calamity of the Tao this time was said to be caused by greed. In fact, it was because his state of mind was not good enough. Otherwise, if his state of mind was strong enough, how could he be affected by mere greed? At the end of the day, it was because his cultivation had advanced too quickly. He had pursued too much strength and neglected the cultivation of his state of mind. When others cultivated, it was mostly because their state of mind had reached a certain level. When everything was ready, they would then make a breakthrough. However, Feng Zichen's cultivation was different. When his strength reached a certain level, he forcefully promoted the advancement of his state. In this way, although the cultivation speed was fast, it was inevitable that there would be flaws in his state of mind. Of course, Feng Zichen understood the hidden dangers of such cultivation. However, he had no other choice. The calamity was right in front of him. Only by working hard to improve his strength would he have a chance of survival. In order to seek a chance to survive, he couldn't care too much. According to his original plan, he planned to wait until the calamity of the Lich and Demon was over. During the time when the untainted land was recuperating, he would polish his state of mind to make up for his hidden dangers. Chapter 343. But who would have thought that once his greed arose, it would directly cause the hidden dangers to erupt and cause the path calamity to descend upon him. He almost collapsed his great Tao and suffered heavy injuries. It could only be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. After calming his mind, Feng Zichen stood up and bowed 3 times respectfully to the void. He was bowing to Pengu. Previously, because his mind was distracted, Feng Zichen's mind was filled with distracting thoughts, and he couldn't help but have ill intentions towards Pengu. Although with Pengu's magnanimity, he wouldn't care about such trivial matters. But if Feng Zichen didn't do this, he would feel guilty. After all, it was Pengu who made him what he was. He still used malice to figure out Pengu, so he couldn't help but feel ashamed. After doing all this, Feng Zichen's heart finally calmed down completely. After tidying up his mood, Feng Zichen pulled himself together and continued to walk into the depths of the Blood Sea. This place might be one of his future dojos. It was good to familiarize himself with it in advance. Speaking of which, the Nether Blood Sea had a fate with him. This fate came from Great Emperor Ziwei. As the most noble existence in the primordial world, Great Emperor Ziwei was the inferior ruler of the 3 realms. His power was not as simple as controlling Zhousing. His power was enough to connect the 2 realms of life and death. In the Heaven Realm, Great Emperor Ziwei was one of the 4 emperors. He was high and mighty and dominated the operation of the stars. In the human world, Great Emperor Ziwei was the lord of all things. He commanded mountains, rivers, plants, wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. He was the king of all phenomena. Even the change of the emperors of the human world was under his control. In the Netherworld realm, Great Emperor Ziwei transformed into the Great Emperor of Fengdu. He dominated the Netherworld and ruled over all ghosts. He was the supreme god of the Netherworld. Great Emperor Ziwei was the ruler of the stars, the ruler of all spells, and the ruler of Fengdu. He was in a high position and had a wide range of advisors. From the examination of the universe's calamity, to the rise and fall of the countries in the world, to the rise and fall of the immortals in the 3 realms, to the misfortune and longevity of all living beings, they were all under his jurisdiction. His divine abilities were boundless, and his magic power was boundless. He could instantly destroy the demons and devils of the 3 realms. Vast and mighty, as high as the heavens, and able to control the movement of lightning. Almost everything in the world was under the jurisdiction of Great Emperor Ziwei. In that case, the Nether Blood Sea was fated to be with Feng Zichen. This place was the predecessor of the Nether Realm. Establish the Fengdu Necropolis, establish the underworld, and establish hell. These are the merits of Ziwei the Great, and they are also my merits. Strolling in the sea of blood, Feng Zichen thought to himself. After Ho-Tu turned into reincarnation, the Netherworld was born to accept the 6 paths of reincarnation and take in the endless souls of the primordial world. And the heavy responsibility of establishing order in the Nether Realm fell on Feng Zichen's shoulders. This was a predestined fate, and he could not refuse it. Of course he would not refuse. However, the Great Emperor of Fengdu is the incarnation of the Great Emperor of Ziwei. He oversees the Netherworld on his behalf, and commands the ghosts of the Netherworld. From the looks of it, I have to refine another incarnation. As he walked, Feng Zichen suddenly thought of something. The Great Emperor of Ziwei was the Lord of the Stars. Naturally, he had to oversee the boundless starry sky, and would not stay in the Nether Realm for a long time. Therefore this Great Emperor of Fengdu was an incarnation. This is troublesome. This incarnation is not easy to refine. It was not difficult to refine an incarnation, but it was difficult to refine an incarnation that could live in the nether blood sea. In the primordial world, there were not many treasures that could do this. Panga's remnant body was one. However, anything left behind by Pangu could live like a fish in water anywhere in the primordial world. The god who created the world would naturally not be rejected by the world. Unfortunately, at this time, the remnant body left behind by Pangu had long been transformed into the world. It was impossible to find it again. As the bloodline descendants of Pangu, the wizard tribe could also survive in the nether blood sea. However, as a wizard, Feng Zichen could not take a member of the wizard tribe and refine an incarnation, could he? As such, there was only one way left. That was to use the treasures born in the blood sea as materials to refine an incarnation. The treasures born in the blood sea could naturally live in the blood sea. This was needless to say. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen could not help but slow down his footsteps. The blood sea was boundless. There must be a lot of treasures. If he searched carefully, he might be able to find something. Just like that, Feng Zichen began to search around the blood sea. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. Even though Feng Zichen deliberately slowed down, 100 years was enough for him to go millions of miles deep into the blood sea. Of course, this distance was nothing to the entire blood sea. Have all the treasures in the blood sea been taken away by Taoist Mingi? Stopping, Feng Zichen said with some displeasure. In the past 100 years, he had searched the blood sea with a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Although it was not to the extent that he did not gain anything, the gains were indescribable. 6 blood essences. It took 100 years. Feng Zichen only found 6 blood essences. These blood essences were enough to refine an incarnation. However, the incarnation refined with them was really not up to standard. It could be said that it was not presentable. Blood essence. As the name suggested, it was the essence of blood. It sounded good, but in fact, it was condensed from the blood water of the blood sea. It was just like the spirit stones of the later generations. It was not considered a good thing. If one used it to refine an incarnation, the incarnation refined would have limited potential. It might not even be comparable to ordinary creatures in the untainted land. It would not be worthy of the name of the Emperor of Feng Du Tiske Tisk. This blood sea lineage is really stingy. At this point, Feng Zichen understood that the treasures in the blood sea were either taken away by the Azura tribe or by Taoist Mingi. It was obvious that the treasures in the blood sea had been plundered by someone long ago. This caused Feng Zichen to spend 100 years without finding anything. If not, he would not have spent 100 years to only find 6 blood essences, which should be everywhere. These 6 blood essences were only born recently. Otherwise, Feng Zichen would not even be able to find 6 blood essences. Only the Nether River lineage could do this in the blood sea. Outsiders did not have the ability, and Taoist Mingi would not allow it. Sigh, if it doesn't work, I'll wait for Ancestral Witch Huta to come and ask for a drop of blood essence from her. Or I can go to the Pango Hall and ask for a drop of Panga's blood from her heart. Fortunately, Feng Zichen was not without a backup plan. The living creatures formed from the blood essence of the ancestral, which were considered top-notch among the Khanate living creatures, second only to the Khanate god fiends. Panga's blood flowed in Panga's heart. Many grand magi of the sorcerer tribe were born from this. The incarnations refined from this would also be top-notch Khanate living creatures. If the two were combined, it was even possible to give birth to a Khanate god fiend. Of course, Feng Zichen had a bold idea. If he gathered the blood essence of the 12 ancestral witches, and supplemented it with Panga's blood, he could definitely give birth to a top-notch Khanate god fiend. The legendary 13th ancestral witch of the sorcerer tribe was born from this method. Chapter 344. However, that was a last resort. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, Feng Zichen would not do it. Because if he really used the blood essence of the witch tribe or Panga's blood to refine an incarnation, his relationship with the witch tribe would really be unclear. When the war between the witch tribe and the demon tribe broke out, he would have to die for the witch tribe to end the karma. In this way, how could Feng Zichen be willing? He transformed into the great emperor of Ziwei to transcend the chaotic situation of the witch tribe and the demon tribe. As a bystander, he would quietly observe the development of the situation. Fortunately, after the war ended, he would seek the greatest benefits. With this thought in mind, how could Feng Zichen put himself in the vortex of the witch tribe and the demon tribe for the incarnation of the great emperor of Fengdu? Wouldn't that be stupid? Therefore, Feng Zichen would rather go to Daoist Mingyi to exchange for treasures than go to the witch tribe to ask for the blood essence of the witch tribe or Panga's blood. He did not owe the witch tribe anything. On the contrary, the witch tribe owed him. Without Feng Zichen, the witch tribe would never have thought of drawing the prehistoric geomancy map. Then, the witch tribe would not have the innate treasure to suppress their fate. And the path of the gods and demons was extremely important to the witch tribe. It changed the fate of the witch tribe and increased the strength of the witch tribe by several times. It also gave the witch tribe the possibility of achieving the path. Such benefits could not be exchanged with innate treasures. It was more precious than the prehistoric geomancy map. The favor of achieving the path was greater than the sky. He let Feng Zichen become a wizard because Dijiang could not think of a way to repay him no matter how hard he racked his brains. This favor was too big. It was so big that the witch tribe could not afford to repay it. Therefore, Dijiang had no choice but to let him become a witch to show his respect. A witch tribe's teacher. Countless witch tribe members learned the cultivation methods created by Feng Zichen. His name as a sorcerer was quite appropriate. Sigh. Let's search for another 100 years. If it doesn't work, I'll think of another way. Sighing helplessly, Feng Zichen continued to walk forward. The Blood Sea was hundreds of times larger than the great wide world. He did not believe that the Nether River clan could really plunder this place clean. As for Hutu, she was in no hurry. Sacrificing oneself, becoming reincarnated, this wasn't a small matter. It was equivalent to suicide. Without sufficient emotions, Hutu would not have made such a decision. After all, when she reincarnated, Hutu was determined to die. She didn't expect that she would be able to survive. Therefore, the current Hutu should still be brewing her emotions. Who knew how long it would take for her to arrive at the Blood Sea? Now Feng Zichen was in no hurry. As Feng Zichen went deeper and deeper, the color of the blood around him became darker and thicker, like a wriggling liquid. It looked extremely disgusting and filthy. Fortunately, the merit of splitting the heavens was purifying them. Otherwise, Feng Zichen definitely wouldn't have taken a step into it. It was disgusting enough to see a cesspool. If he walked in, wouldn't it be even more disgusting? Screech. Suddenly, a sharp scream rang in Feng Zichen's ears. Then he saw a dark red shadow galloping toward him. Who is it? Feng Zichen's face turned cold. His imposing aura swept out. Suddenly the void froze. The figure galloping toward him was directly fixed in the void. It was a humanoid monster. Although it had a human shape, it did not have a physical body. It was a monster formed by a mixture of hostility and blood. This is... Looking at the monster, Feng Zichen frowned slightly. Then he suddenly exerted force. The surrounding void immediately pressed toward the monster. With a bang, the monster's body was directly crushed into pieces. It turned into wisps of blood and merged into the Blood Sea. Following the disappearance of the monster's body, a broken true spirit fell out from within. I see. Seeing this true spirit, Feng Zichen immediately understood the origin of the monster. After the creatures of the untainted land died, their true spirits would be summoned by the Blood Sea and come here. However, the underworld would not appear before the reincarnation cycle opened. After these true spirits came here, they had nothing to rely on. They could only float in the Blood Sea. But what kind of place was the Blood Sea? It was a filthy place in the world. After these true spirits came here, they were unsurprisingly sucked into it. After these true spirits were sucked into the Blood Sea, the lucky ones would be enlightened by the Nether River Taoist and reappear in the world as Azuras. The unlucky ones could only continue to wander in the Blood Sea and wait for the reincarnation cycle to open. The unlucky ones would be more miserable. They would be contaminated by hostility and become monsters that only knew how to kill, just like the monster Feng Zichen had killed earlier. How tragic! I can't even rest in peace after death. Looking at this true spirit, Feng Zichen could not help but feel compassion. He stretched out his hand and the aura of Hongmeng circulated, enveloping the true spirit and washing away the hostility on his body, making him pure again. And the moment the true spirit recovered its purity, a sudden change occurred. A will suddenly came from his body. Taoist priests are merciful. The true spirit was enlightened by Feng Zichen, and actually regained its clarity for a short period of time, remembering its previous life. Although it only lasted for a moment, it was still an amazing creation. This is Ghost. This magical scene fell into Feng Zichen's eyes like a clap of thunder, reminding him of a special group of people in the future. Ghosts. Wasn't that so? After a person died, he did not lose his intelligence. He had a form but no body. Wasn't that a ghost? However, there was a difference between them and the future. The ghosts of the future were formed by souls. The ghosts of the untainted land were formed by true spirits. As everyone knew, only when one's cultivation reached the golden immortal realm would one's true spirit possess immortality. Only then would one's lifespan be as long as the heavens and live forever. Similarly, when one's cultivation reached the golden immortal realm, even if their primordial spirit and physical body were destroyed, they could still maintain their true spirit and have a chance to start again. It was also at this time that the call of the blood sea was useless to them. They could easily break free. However, for cultivators who had not reached the golden immortal realm, there was still a chance of survival if their physical body was destroyed. If their primordial spirit was destroyed, they would really die. Their true spirits could not escape the call of the blood sea, nor could they maintain the survival of their intelligence. Therefore, if they died, they would really die. The true spirits gathered in the nether blood sea were mostly cultivators below the golden immortal realm. Only a small number of unlucky golden immortals, and Tai Jingxian, whose true spirits were shattered, would come to the blood sea. The true spirit in front of Feng Zichen was a Tai Jingxian when it was alive. Otherwise, it would not have temporarily recovered its intelligence. Ghost? Is this a sign of something? At this moment, Feng Zichen could not help but fall into deep thought. The Emperor of Feng Du was not only the Lord of the Underworld, but he was also the Bain Ghost Emperor. However, there were no ghosts in the current untainted land, nor were there any ghost cultivation methods. Ghosts were products of the postnatal era. There were none in the postnatal era. Chapter 345. Ghost. To put it bluntly, was the soul. Was made up of 3 souls and 7 spirits. But innate spirits did not have souls. They only had an innate true spirit. The great void was vast, the foundation turned into the origin, the beginning of all things, the 5 fortunes of the heavens, the distribution of qi, the origin of the earth. The true spirit existed in the vast universe and had the most primitive life functions. It was the subtle matter that could transform all things, and was the origin of all things. It was the origin of life, the most essential power of the universe. Only with a true spirit could one be considered a true living being. Whether it was the primordial spirit of an immortal or the soul of a mortal, they were all special energy bodies evolved from the true spirit and supplemented by the qi of heaven and earth. It was like a placenta that wrapped around the true spirit to prevent it from being hurt. The innate true spirit was extremely fragile, but it was the foundation of a person. It was related to the future path of the Tao and was very important. Therefore, the primordial spirit and soul were born. Of course, the primordial spirit and soul were no different in nature. If there was a difference, the primordial spirit was the final form of the soul. After layers of baptism, the soul would first transform into the Yin spirit, then into the Yang spirit, and finally into the primordial spirit. Innate godfiends were born great. Once they transformed, they would at least have the realm of a golden immortal. Therefore, they were born with primordial spirits. Postnatal life forms were born weak, and were far less powerful than innate life forms. They were born without a realm, and were just ordinary mortals. Therefore, what they had was a soul. They needed to climb up step by step to have a primordial spirit, and reach the starting point of the innate godfiend. Emperor of Feng Du, Ghost Emperor of Bain. This is the will of the heavens. It's time for the ghost path to appear. At this moment, Feng Zichen understood. The Emperor of Fengdu commanded the 10,000 ghosts, and was the king of the underworld. The will of the heavens had already shown him that the most suitable person to become the Emperor of Fengdu was a ghost. Why would he need to spend so much effort to find the treasure of the Sea of Blood? Wouldn't he be the most suitable candidate for the Emperor of Fengdu by directly using the true spirit to evolve an incarnation of the ghost path? Ruling the 10,000 ghosts with a ghost body and becoming the king of the underworld. This was the true right and proper. Moreover, the ghost path had not appeared yet. When Feng Zichen refined the ghost path incarnation, he took the opportunity to establish the ghost path and pass down the method of ghost cultivation. In this way, it was equivalent to opening up a new path for the remnant spirits floating in the Sea of Blood. These were all Feng Zichen's merits. If this is the case, then my power will be complete. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen could not help but feel a little excited. If the ghost Tao came into being, then the three realms of heaven, earth, and man would be under his control. After the witch and demon cataclysm, the heavenly court would be re-established. With such momentum, he would ascend to the throne of the four great emperors. Even if the sages were unwilling, they could do nothing to stop him. They could only grit their teeth and agree. His throne was not that of the great emperor of Ziwei, who was like a puppet. Instead, it was the great emperor of Ziwei Polaris who ruled over the three realms of heaven, earth, and man. It was the great emperor of Ziwei Polaris who ruled over everything in the world. The sect master of the myriad star sect, the grand master of myriad creation, one of the patriarchs of the immortal Tao, the most divine and most sacred, the limitless primitive emperor. With the supreme power in his hands and the karmic ranking of heaven and earth, even the sages dared not underestimate him. Refine. With a decision in his heart, Feng Zichen immediately moved. He formed a seal with his hands and condensed the origin of heaven and earth from the void in an attempt to refine an innate true spirit. The true spirit was the origin of heaven and earth. To heaven and earth, the endless living beings were the most precious treasures. That was because they were created with the origin of heaven and earth. How did the cataclysm come about? It was because of this. The higher the cultivation realm, the stronger the innate true spirit, and the more origin it could absorb from heaven and earth. Of course, this was not a good thing for the untainted land, because the origin of heaven and earth was limited. The more cultivators there were, the more origin they would need. Of course, the origin of heaven and earth could not be produced out of thin air. It could only be extracted from heaven and earth. In particular, the existence of Daluo Jingxian was the greatest burden to heaven and earth. Ordinary cultivators would die one day, and their origin would return to heaven and earth to form a virtuous cycle. However, Daluo Jingxian was different. They were immortal, which meant that the origin of heaven and earth that they had absorbed, the untainted land, would be lost forever. This was a great harm to the untainted land. The more Daluo Jingxian there were, the greater the harm to heaven and earth. If heaven and earth lost their origin, it would weaken. The more origin it lost, the more obvious the effect would be. It might even cause its level to drop and enter the age of Dharma ending. Originally, the purpose of heaven and earth creating living beings was to nurture them and let them grow continuously. When they died, their origin would be taken back. This was also a way for the world to advance. However, the appearance of Daluo Jingxian was like a worm, lying on the body of the world, constantly absorbing the origin of heaven and earth and consuming the potential of the world. Therefore, in order to maintain the good ecology of the world, the heavenly Tao operated karma and triggered the calamity of heaven and earth. Its purpose was to reduce the number of immortals in heaven and earth, to recover the origin and strengthen itself. Since it could not deal with Daluo Jingxian, the heavenly Tao could only deal with the remaining cultivators. Fortunately, compared to Daluo Jingxian, there were enough Tai Jingxian. It was completely possible to win with quantity. There must be an effect if there was a cause. All the calamities in the world would not be without a cause. Rumble. Amidst the rumbling, balls of Kanate Chi were refined by Feng Zichen and condensed repeatedly, forming wisps of the origin of heaven and earth. Judging from his speed, It would probably take less than a few years to refine a ball of the origin of heaven and earth. The means of a golden immortal of the great, all-embracing heaven was indeed extraordinary. Feng Zichen was able to refine the origin that had dispersed into heaven and earth from the congenital qi. Otherwise, why would Daoyuo Jingxian be called the worm of heaven and earth? In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. One could see that a small ball of the origin of heaven and earth had formed in Feng Zichen's hand. This was enough for him to evolve incarnate true spirit. However, Feng Zichen did not stop. Instead, he continued to condense the origin of heaven and earth. Connate true spirits also had levels. The difference between different levels was huge, no less than the difference between heaven and earth. That was the difference in aptitude, comprehension, potential, and identity. Just like connate godfiends and postnatal living beings. Therefore, Feng Zichen wanted to condense the origin of heaven and earth as much as possible. He did not expect to refine a powerful connate incarnation, but at least it would be passable. The connate true spirit was perfect and flawless. It had eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. The Tao body was naturally formed, and the 9 orifices were connected. It corresponded to the Tao of heaven and earth, and was a connate godfiend. The connate true spirit was as bright as a mirror, untainted by dust, reflecting the rules of heaven and earth. Although it did not form a Tao body, it was also quite mysterious. It was a connate living being. The connate true spirit was like a firefly, flickering and not magical at all. It was a postnatal living being. At this time, the connate true spirit was not called connate true spirit, but true spirit light. That was because it was too small. Chapter 346. This bit of true spiritual light was the only innate item in the body of a postnatal life form. If a postnatal life form wanted to go against postnatal and become innate, prove the supreme great Tao, and cultivate into the immortal Daoyuo Jingxian, they could only rely on this bit of true spiritual light. This was the foundation of their Tao. The essence of the Tao of Godfiends was to constantly strengthen this bit of true spiritual light, so that it could transform into a Tao body and transform into a connate godfiend. Of course, the incarnation that Feng Zichen wanted to refine couldn't be a postnatal life form. If he wanted to refine a postnatal life form incarnation, he could directly use blood essence. It wouldn't be so troublesome. The incarnation that he wanted to refine was not something a connate godfiend dared to hope for, but it had to be at least a top-level connate life form. Connate godfiends were great creatures created by heaven and earth. Each of them was a seed of Daoyuo Jingxian. As long as nothing unexpected happened, they were destined to become Daoyuo Taoist priests. With Feng Zichen's strength, Daoyuo Jingxian couldn't create a connate godfiend. Even if a saint wanted to create such a great creature, it would be extremely difficult. He would have to pay a considerable price. Therefore, he could only use his strongest method to refine a top-level connate life-form incarnation. In fact, it wasn't that difficult to refine a connate godfiend incarnation. Now there was an opportunity in front of Feng Zichen. It was just that he wasn't willing. In the netherworld blood sea, there were countless fragments of true spirits floating. If Feng Zichen could steal his heart and melt these true spirits, he didn't even need all of them. Just a small part of them could be refined into a connate godfiend incarnation. However, this move was too harmful to the harmony of heaven. If he really did it, he would definitely be entangled with endless negative karma and attract divine punishment. Think about it. These true spirits were originally quietly staying in the blood sea, waiting for the cycle of reincarnation to open so that they could start a new life and start over. In the future, if they were fated, these true spirits that reincarnated could become golden immortals. They might be able to understand their previous selves and recall the past. However, if Feng Zichen refined them, they would really disappear from the untainted land. Reincarnation or starting over would have nothing to do with them. It had completely disappeared. Not a single trace of it remained. He couldn't imagine how big of a sin this was. The heavenly Tao would definitely be enraged and send down heavenly punishment. Of course, Feng Zichen had experienced heavenly punishment many times and had experience. In addition, he had a lot of merit on him. A mere heavenly punishment would not scare him. Most importantly, he couldn't bear it. Why would Feng Zichen attack these innocent true spirits for an innate god-fiend avatar if there was no grudge between them? This was not in accordance with the heavenly Tao. It was also contrary to his original intention. Therefore I won't do it. Even if Feng Zichen managed to refine an incarnation using this method, his Tao heart would be flawed, and he would not be able to achieve the state of fusion. In that case, he would completely lose the hope of breaking through to the primordial chaos Tao realm. He would have no fate with the great Tao in this life. Moreover, slaughtering billions of innocent people for his own selfish reasons was the demonic Tao. Everyone in the untainted land had the right to kill him. If Feng Zichen really did that, Niwa would be the first to not let him off, let alone the other saints. No matter how fierce the demonic Tao was, they would not lay their hands on true spirits. No matter how ferocious a devil was, he would not be able to refine someone else's true spirit. Refining true spirits was the common evil of the untainted land. It was a taboo in the world. No matter how intense the battle was or how great the hatred was, the most one could do was to shatter the opponent's true spirit into pieces, completely erase its intelligence, and scatter it into the world, cutting off all chances of resurrection. No one had ever heard of anyone refining someone else's true spirit. Otherwise, with so many true spirits in the Blood Sea, Taoist Mingyi would have taken action long ago. Why would he have stayed until now? Wasn't it good to use these true spirits to create a Jura clansman of the innate god-fiend level? Why did he need to enlighten them one by one? It was so troublesome. It was not that he was unwilling, but he could not. Now reincarnation had yet to be established. If new living beings were to be born in the primordial world, they could only be born through the spontaneous nurturing of the world. However, nurturing living beings required the consumption of the essence of the world. Even if the world did not care about these essences, nurturing innate true spirits and giving birth to true living beings required a long process. In the primordial world, it was extremely chaotic. Living beings were dying all the time. Moreover, this speed was definitely faster than the speed at which living beings were born in the primordial world. According to this, there should be fewer and fewer living beings in the primordial world. However, the truth was that there were more and more living beings in the primordial world. The reason was those innate true spirits. When an innate god-fiend died and his innate true spirit was shattered, 129,600 innate life forms could be born. When an innate life form died, and his true spirit was shattered, 129,600 postnatal life forms could be born. And these were only at the initial stage of their birth. If the innate god-fiends were stronger and their innate true spirits were shattered, more innate life forms could be born. It was because of these shattered innate true spirits that there were more and more innate life forms in the primordial world. Of course, the number of innate god-fiends was also decreasing. If one had studied the history of the primordial world, they would discover that after every calamity, a large number of living beings would be born in the primordial world. That was because too many experts had died in the cataclysm. Moreover, the aptitude of these born innate life forms was weaker with each generation. After the primordial beast calamity, most of the living beings born in the world were innate god-fiends. Most of the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace were born during this period. Only a small number of living beings were innate life forms, and they were the top innate life forms. After the ancient Longhan calamity, most of the living beings born in the world were innate life forms. Only a small number of living beings were innate god-fiends. The top disciples of the third generation of the celestial sect of wonders were the products of this era. Then, after the shaman demon calamity, most of the living beings born in the world were postnatal life forms. Only a small number of living beings were innate life forms. After all, at this time, the primordial world had undergone a huge change. It had changed from the innate era to the postnatal era. However, the postnatal life forms of this era had decent aptitude. Any one of them had the possibility of becoming an immortal. After the investiture of the gods' calamity, the innate era had completely transformed into the postnatal era. The living beings born in the world were only postnatal life forms. Only those top grotto heavens and blessed lands with endless fortune could give birth to innate life forms. The postnatal life forms of this era were affected by the environment. Their aptitude was undoubtedly much weaker. Any one of them could only be said to have the possibility of cultivating. As for becoming an immortal, it depended on one's own fortune. Chapter 347. After the journey to the West Calamity, the world had completely changed. The Khanate era had long become a myth, and the living beings that were born had completely become ordinary people. Not to mention cultivating the path of immortality. Even those who had the talent to cultivate were 1 in a million. The primordial world had always been moving backwards. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. On this day, Feng Zichen finally completed the condensation of the origin of heaven and earth. There was a ball of yellow Dao light in his hand. It was dazzling and emitted the aura of the origin of all things. The sky was black, and the earth was yellow. Yellow was the color of heaven and earth. This was the origin of heaven and earth. Feng Zichen spent 100 years to complete it. Go. Pointing at his forehead, Feng Zichen pulled out a stream of qi of true spirit and injected it into the origin of heaven and earth. In the end, it was Daoyuo Jingxian. It was different from before. To refine an incarnation, a stream of qi of true spirit was enough. There was no need to split the Khanate true spirit. The function of this stream of qi of true spirit was to imprint his own mark on the origin of heaven and earth to ensure that the Khanate true spirit evolved from it was his incarnation, and not an independent life. Otherwise, it would be a real joke if he did not refine the incarnation and had an extra child for no reason. After the qi of true spirit and the origin of heaven and earth had perfectly merged, Feng Zichen began to evolve the Khanate true spirit. He still knew how to create life. Among the 36 great divine powers of the Big Dipper, the supreme great divine power of mediating creation had the power to create life. Evolving the universe and creating life was a great divine power that could create something out of nothing. In the past, Niwa had used this divine power to create the human race. Feng Zichen had practiced the Big Dipper 36 transformations for many years. Of course, he was not unfamiliar with this divine power. It should be said that he was familiar with the 36 supreme great divine powers recorded in the Big Dipper 36 transformations. Mediating creation. Feng Zichen formed a Dao seal and chanted a Dao voice, attracting the power from the unseen world. With the help of his hand gestures, he unleashed this earth-shattering great divine ability. Although Feng Zichen could perform it, his realm was not as high as Niwa's, so he could not perform it as he wished. It could only be activated with a Dao seal and an incantation. With the completion of Feng Zichen's hand gesture, the void suddenly changed, as if it had collapsed, and huge cracks appeared. Divine light appeared. Then from the crack, the qi of creation surged out and wrapped around the origin of heaven and earth. Star River Universal Light Rise. Seeing this, Feng Zichen quickly used another supreme technique, the Milky Way Cosmic Light. This was a supreme technique that he had comprehended from Zhouxing. It was a great technique that belonged to the way of time and space, and it had the ability to control time and space. With Feng Zichen's mastery of the mediating creation, if he wanted to rely on it to create living beings, it would take at least 100 years, or even a few thousand years. This period of time was too long. Therefore, Feng Zichen used the Milky Way cosmic light to forcibly accelerate time and mature the origin of heaven and earth. A wisp of purple gold light appeared, with the aura of time, enveloping the origin of heaven and earth and the qi of creation. In an instant, the sea turned into mulberry fields, and endless years passed. It seemed like tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. The origin of heaven and earth and the qi of creation merged and turned into a divine fetus with the aura of life. At first it was weak, then it became stronger and stronger. In the end, the divine fetus exploded, and a Khanate true spirit emerged from it. It had the outline of a human, and its whole body was white and flawless, surrounded by divine light. This was a Khanate life form, just as Feng Zichen thought, the top Khanate life form. However, this incarnation did not have a physical body, and was only a Khanate true spirit. It was also because of this that he could be created by Feng Zichen in such a short period of time with a ball of origin of heaven and earth. Otherwise, how could a complete top-level Xiantian life form, be created by a mere ball of the origin of heaven and earth. Of course, this incarnation did not need a physical body. It was a ghost. And it was the most basic ghost. Why would it need a physical body? A ghost body was enough. Fengdu greets me. With a flash of spiritual light, this incarnation gained sentience and understood its origins. Haha. You and I are one. There's no need to be so polite. As they spoke, the two of them looked at each other and laughed in unison. It was amazing to have two bodies at the same time. From this moment on, Feng Zichen had another nickname in the primordial world. The supreme deity of the netherworld, the Bane Ghost Emperor, the Lord of the Netherworld, the King of Hell, and the Emperor of Fengdu who commanded all ghosts. Dong, a long bell rang. Hongming Daozhong came from the North Star and landed between the two of them. Boundless Taoist rhymes spread out, and Hongming's aura spread out. In this sea of blood, a hazy purple Dao domain was formed. Inside, 3,000 great Daos manifested. They intertwined with each other and deduced endless laws. All the principles of the world could be found in it. During the trip to the great chaos of the outer realm, although the Hongming Daozhong did not advance to a connate cardinal treasure, it had been baptized by the power of the great Dao and had improved slightly. This purple Dao domain was the result of its improvement. Dao domain, great Dao domain. Inside, it was filled with the laws of the great Dao. It could help one cultivate, deduce divine abilities, and perfect cultivation techniques. It was a first-class holy land for enlightenment. The incarnation of the ghost Dao had been born. Next, it was to establish the ghost Dao and create a ghost cultivation technique. Therefore, Feng Zichen wanted to use the power of Hongming Daozhong to improve his comprehension, so that he could create the ghost cultivation technique that was closest to perfection. Ghosts were beings of extreme yin. In the later generations, true ghost cultivators relied on absorbing starlight and moonlight to cultivate in the early stages of cultivation. Therefore, Feng Zichen planned to create the ghost cultivation technique from there. When it came to the Tao of the stars, he was the true expert. Even Di Juntai was inferior. Firstly, the two of them did not receive the three enclosures Tao scripture. Secondly, compared to the Emperor star, the Sun star was closer to the Tao of the Sun. In terms of the Tao of the stars, it was far less orthodox than the Emperor star. Thirdly, Di Juntai did not have the inheritance of the star demon god. In terms of the Tao of the stars, he was not as deep as Feng Zichen. From this, it could be seen that in the primordial world, Feng Zichen's comprehension of the Tao of the stars could be said to be number one. At the very least, he had attained the Tao of the stars. As the Tao master of the stars, Di Jun did not notice. Wasn't this the embodiment of Di Jun's inferiority? Creating the ghost Tao was not difficult for Feng Zichen. The ghosts now were the innate true spirits. And the Tao of the gods and demons was the method to cultivate the innate true spirits. The yin god and yang god concepts inside were very suitable for the ghost Tao. If he took it out and changed it, he would not change the cultivation of the true spirit. Then he would change the physical body into the primordial spirit. It would be almost a ghost cultivation technique. It had to be said that this ghost Tao was really fated with Feng Zichen. Back then, when he created the Tao of the gods and demons, he did not expect that this cultivation technique could be used as a ghost cultivation technique. Chapter 348. Who could say for sure when it came to fated opportunities? After entering the purple precept domain, Feng Zichen flashed and entered the body of Fengdu's incarnation. He merged with it and disappeared. The great emperor of Fengdu was the incarnation of great emperor Ziwei in the netherworld. Although no one knew now, when great emperor Ziwei appeared in the future, all living beings in the primordial world would know. If people found out that Feng Zichen and the great emperor of Fengdu were together, it would inevitably cause others to suspect their relationship. This was not good. The relationship between Feng Zichen and great emperor Ziwei could not be exposed. Great Emperor Ziwei was Great Emperor Ziwei, and Feng Zichen was Feng Zichen. These were two completely different people with different experiences and different destinies. They had no relationship at all, and could not be involved in any way. This was related to Feng Zichen's future plan, so he could not be careless in the slightest. Therefore, he would not do anything that might expose the true identity of Great Emperor Ziwei. Even if he did do it, he had to be extremely cautious and erase all traces afterward. The Great Emperor of Fengdu and Great Emperor Ziwei were involved. Therefore, without a suitable reason, Feng Zichen could not let others see the connection between them. Compared to Feng Zichen's strength, Fengdu's strength was too weak. He had only reached the innate realm. This was the second realm of cultivation, and it was also the lowest level among innate life forms. It was only higher than the acquired realm, which was unique to postnatal life forms. Of course, this was deliberately done by Feng Zichen. Otherwise, as the top innate life form, Fengdu's strength should have at least the cultivation of a celestial immortal. If he wanted to open up a new great path, of course, he had to start from the most basic realm and feel every realm again. If he had not experienced it personally, how could he open up the most perfect cultivation method? Therefore, Fengdu's initial realm was only the innate realm. It was convenient for him to use every realm to verify the method of ghost cultivation. As for why it was not the acquired realm, that was because Fengdu was an innate life form, and the weakest innate life form had the cultivation of the innate realm. This was the bottom line of innate life forms. The essence was so and could not be changed. As Feng Zichen's mind was completely immersed in the derivation of the cultivation technique, the purple Dao domain also quieted down without any sound. Just like that, another 100 years passed. On this day, Feng Zichen, who had been silent for 100 years, suddenly moved. 3 rays of light gushed out of his body. The first ray of light was the light of life, which originated from its mother. If one lived in a human body for a long time, it could make one feel refreshed and live longer. After it appeared, it immediately fused with the 9 heavens Yangqi, and turned into a ball of gas. This was the fetal light, the heaven soul of the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man. It ruled over a person's lifespan. The second ray of light was the light of wisdom, which originated from its father. It caused man to scheme against all living things, to toil 100 deities, and to bring about disaster. After it appeared, it directly merged with the 5 elements qi in the world, and turned into a ball of gas. This was Shuangling, the human soul of the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man. It determined a person's wisdom and ability. The third ray of light was the light of disaster. It caused people to be lustful and addicted to dirty thoughts. It consumed their essence, caused them to lack divine qi, insufficient kidney qi, and blocked the 5 meridians of the spleen and stomach. After it appeared, it directly merged with the extreme yin qi in the world, and turned into a ball of gas. This was the netherworld spirit, the earth soul of the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man. It controlled the gonads and sexual orientation of the human body. After the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man were born, they suddenly merged into one and turned into a huge ball of gas, enveloping Feng Zichen's body. Outside his body, it was constantly changing, as if it was about to turn into a human form. However, it seemed to be missing something. Every time the human form was about to condense, the ball of gas formed by the 3 souls would shatter and scatter into a ball. Then it would condense again, try to turn into a human form again, and shatter again. It would condense again, and shatter again. The cycle repeated. Ha! With a deep shout, emotions surged on Feng Zichen's body. There were joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, evil, and desire. 7 emotions appeared and evolved outside his body, fusing with the 3 souls. These were the 7 souls: corpse dog, concealed arrow, sparrow een, thief seizing, non-poison, filth removal, and smelly lung. They were formed by human emotions. The 7 souls appeared and immediately merged with the 3 souls. Immediately, the 3 souls stabilized and formed an illusory figure outside Feng Zichen's body. It looked exactly like him. This was a soul. Feng Zichen relied on the knowledge of the later generations to refine a fetal coat outside the connate true spirit, which was what the later generations called the soul. It was used to protect the true spirit. Rumble. As soon as the soul was formed, the heavenly Tao immediately sensed it and lowered its gaze. The rules of heaven and earth appeared, and auspicious clouds spread out. The scene of the clear saint appeared, tearing a hole in the resentment that had not dissipated all year round above the blood sea. The The soul was something that had never appeared before. In the current primordial world, the fetal coat used to protect the connate true spirit was the primordial spirit. Compared to the soul, it was more high-end, more powerful, and more perfect. However, although the primordial spirit was good, it had a flaw. That was, only cultivators who had become immortals could refine the primordial spirit. There were no cultivators below the heaven immortal realm. The primordial spirit was unique to immortal cultivators. The soul was the opposite. It was prepared for those who had not become immortals or even mortals. Strictly speaking, the yin spirit and the yang spirit were also a type of soul. It was a special change in the process of the soul transforming into the primordial spirit. The essence was still the soul. The appearance of the soul could be said to make up for the shortcomings of the primordial world. Therefore, the heavenly Tao was alarmed. Supreme majesty shrouded the blood sea, and the vast aura was terrifying. Taoist Mingi, who was in seclusion, was immediately awakened by this aura. Who is he? Opening his eyes, Taoist Mingi immediately discovered the source of the change. He narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of Feng Zichen. What? How can this be? In the next moment, when he saw Feng Zichen, Taoist Mingi could not help but narrow his eyes and cry out in surprise. In his tone, there was half doubt and half shock. Because he could not see through that person at all. This sounded a little unbelievable, but it really happened. One had to know that Taoist Mingi was in existence in the great perfection of sage to be. In the primordial world, there were not many people that he could not see through. Moreover, he knew all these people. However, he had no impression of this person in front of him. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. Strange, really strange. In his eyes, that person was standing quietly on the blood sea. His entire body was covered by a dazzling purple light. He could not see through his depth, nor could he figure out his origin. He was mysterious and unpredictable. As for the Hongming Daozhong, the moment the three souls were born, the Hongming Daozhong had been kept by Feng Zichen. This treasure was too eye-catching. It could not be seen by outsiders. Chapter 349. Of course, Taoist Mingi couldn't see through Feng Zichen. Outside his body, it was the merit of opening the heavens. It was a supreme treasure that could allow one to become a sage. It was enough to cover all traces. Even if a sage came, he could only recognize the origin of the merit of creation. And he couldn't see Feng Zichen through him. Although Taoist Mingi was strong, he was still quite a distance away from the primordial chaos Tao realm. Therefore, he couldn't see through the cover of the merit of creation. It wasn't that he was weak, but that the merit of creation was too strong. Since a sacred object was called a sacred object, it naturally had the ability to defy the heavens. Otherwise, how could it attract the pursuit of countless living beings? Boom! An invisible force erupted, and in an instant, it swept through the entire primordial chaos. This was, the heavenly Tao had made its move. Only the heavenly Tao could release a power that could affect the entire primordial chaos in an instant. When the invisible force brushed past, all the living beings in the primordial chaos who had yet to become an immortal felt a wonderful change in their bodies. The light of spirituality appeared, and combined with the qi of yin and yang, and the 5 elements, together with the qi of the 7 emotions, it formed a fetal coat on the body of the innate true spirit. That was the soul. At this moment, all the living beings in the primordial chaos who had yet to become an immortal had a soul. The innate flaw was completely made up for. Immediately, a feeling of perfection appeared on those living beings. It was as if the birth of a soul had made them even more perfect. A sense of joy surged from the innate true spirit, causing those living beings who had given birth to souls to smile uncontrollably. In this atmosphere, even the world seemed to be infected. The entire primordial chaos was filled with an aura of joy. Whoosh! Golden light was like rain, dazzling and resplendent. It descended from the sky and fell into Feng Zichen's body. When the soul came out, the merit would descend. Feng Zichen made up for the deficiencies of the living beings in the primordial chaos. This was a matter of great merit, so naturally, great merit would descend. This time, in the face of such a huge amount of merit, Feng Zichen didn't refuse. Instead, he circulated his cultivation technique and absorbed all of it to improve his strength. The netherworld was about to appear. If one wanted to establish a foothold in it, it wasn't enough to rely on identity and qualifications. One also had to have great strength. Otherwise, no one would be convinced. Just like Haotian in the future, he had supreme status, but no corresponding strength. In the end, he could only be reduced to a puppet. If Dijun lost the throne, the living beings of the primordial world would still respect him. Because he was strong enough, no one dared to disrespect him. However, if Haotian were to lose his throne, all his glory would disappear along with it. Because compared to Dijun, he was too weak. It was far inferior to his greatness. In the end, the Great Desolate Aeon was a place where strength mattered. The prerequisite for seniority was equal in strength. How could Daoyuo Jingxian compare seniority with Tai Jingxian? Their life forms had changed and they were no longer the same creatures. Their understanding of things and the meaning of existence were also different. All the comparisons were meaningless now. The difference between them was like the difference between humans and animals. Under such circumstances, seniority was important. Was that even possible? As the merit entered his body, Feng Zichen's realm was soaring. Earth immortal, heaven immortal, mystic immortal. In the blink of an eye, his realm had reached Tai Jingxian, and it was still increasing. If he relied on himself to cultivate, it would take at least tens of thousands of years. But now, with the help of merit, he did it in a few breaths. The black-yellow merit was worthy of being a treasure to increase one's cultivation. Of course, this was also related to Feng Zichen's realm, which was Daoyuo Jingxian. Otherwise, no matter how fast merit could increase one's cultivation, it couldn't be so fast. And with the increase of his realm, Feng Zichen's body also underwent a huge change. Light spots suddenly lit up on his soul. After counting carefully, there were a total of 365 light spots. They seemed to correspond to the stars in the sky, and also seemed to correspond to the spirit cave of the earth. Penga's meridian diagram. Feng Zichen used his soul to replace his physical body, modified the Godfiend scripture, and created the supreme scripture of the ghost cultivators. The Ghost Code. The Godfiend Tao was to open up the divine aperture in the physical body, evolve the Penga's meridian diagram, and reverse engineer the Penga's Tao body to strengthen the true spirit. The Ghost Tao was to open up the ghost aperture in the soul, and evolve a Penga's meridian diagram. This was reverse engineering the Penga's primordial spirit. Ghosts didn't have a physical body, so they didn't need a physical body. They directly refined an innate primordial spirit. In the end, they directly reversed everything and formed the Penga's primordial spirit. With this, they broke into the primordial chaos Tao realm and became indestructible. This was a technique that was completely different from the Godfiend Tao. It could be said that the Ghost Tao and the Godfiend Tao were two extremes. One completely abandoned the primordial spirit and focused on cultivating the physical body in order to cultivate the Penga's true body and complete the magnificent feat of using strength to achieve the Tao. The other completely abandoned the physical body and focused on cultivating the primordial spirit in order to cultivate the Penga's primordial spirit and combine the Tao of heaven and earth to achieve the Tao. Of course, the two also had something in common, and that was that they were both based on the true spirit. The true spirit was the foundation. The physical body and primordial spirit served the true spirit. Opportunity. A great opportunity. Without a doubt, if he could reverse engineer the Penga's primordial spirit, it would make up for Feng Zichen's biggest shortcoming. Feng Zichen didn't have a primordial spirit. His true spirit was too powerful, causing no primordial spirit to be able to withstand the power of the true spirit. Not to mention wrapping the true spirit. If one wanted to get close, they would be crushed into pieces by the powerful power of the true spirit. This was also what Feng Zichen was proud of. There was no other true spirit as powerful as him in the primordial world. However, pride was pride. It didn't mean that there was no problem. The physical body, primordial spirit, and true spirit complemented each other. If one was missing, it wouldn't be so coordinated. Although he couldn't see any problems now, there might be problems in the future. He had to guard against this. However, no matter how hard Feng Zichen tried, he couldn't refine a suitable primordial spirit. There was one in the past, but that innate primordial spirit was sent into the Thunder-Locked Dao fetus and turned into the North Star Emperor. Even if he took it back now, it had been out of his body for so long that it probably wouldn't be able to adapt to the power of the true spirit. Now, the birth of the Ghost Dao had completely solved his problem. In this world, was there still a primordial spirit stronger than Panga's primordial spirit? No. Moreover, his goal was Panga's true body, which was the most compatible with Panga's primordial spirit. When Panga's true body and Panga's primordial spirit were all refined, achieving the Tao would be easy. The human incarnation mainly cultivated the physical body, while the Ghost Dao incarnation mainly cultivated the primordial spirit. The comprehension of the two would be gathered on the original body of the Emperor Star. The benefits obtained would definitely be beyond imagination. This was the true great Tao that could be expected. The gains obtained from this trip to the Blood Sea completely exceeded Feng Zichen's expectations. Just the benefits obtained from opening up the Ghost Dao were enough for him to enjoy for the rest of his life. Chapter 350. Even if he didn't get any benefits in the next cycle of reincarnation, it would be a worthwhile trip. The benefits were not as important as the completion of his own path. The 365 ghost apertures opened at the same time and connected into one. They emitted a powerful suction force, swallowing the essence of the stars and the extreme yin qi of the earth. Rumble. Amidst the rumbling, Feng Zichen's body shook violently. The illusory ghost body was immediately fixed. It seemed to have a texture. The yin spirit was formed. Then the changes did not stop. With the help of the qi of merit, all the ghost apertures were filled with yin qi in an instant. In the next moment, extreme yin gave birth to yang. First, a wisp of pure yang qi appeared and then spread throughout his body. With a sizzling sound, the yin qi on the yin spirit's body was refined and turned into pure yang qi. The yang spirit was formed. Without hesitation, Feng Zichen silently operated the three pure Taoist scriptures and extracted the principles of Panga's primordial spirit and imprinted them on the yang spirit. He made the yang spirit as close to Panga's primordial spirit as possible. The three pure ones were formed by Panga's primordial spirit. The Taoist scriptures they created naturally contained part of the principles of Panga's primordial spirit. With this, he might be able to see a trace of the mysteries of Panga's primordial spirit. Boom, boom, boom. A total of 108 bolts of golden lightning struck down on Feng Zichen's yang spirit. This was a heavenly tribulation. There was originally no heavenly tribulation in the current primordial world. However, under Feng Zichen's series of actions, a heavenly tribulation was born. Moreover, the current heavenly tribulation was more powerful than the heavenly tribulation in the future. Of course, not everyone was qualified to undergo such a powerful heavenly tribulation. Only those with heaven-defying aptitude could pass it. This was a heavenly tribulation specially prepared for people like Feng Zichen. As the three pure Taoist scriptures were operated, no matter how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, it could not hurt him at all. Instead, it was refined by him and turned into nutrients for his growth. In the end, he had Daoyuo Jinxian's cultivation. If he was injured by the heavenly tribulation, he would lose a lot of face. After the heavenly tribulation, Feng Zichen became a celestial immortal, and his yang spirit turned into a primordial spirit. At this point, the primordial spirit could already produce flesh and blood. Apart from not being as strong as the physical body, there was no difference. It even had many more mysterious abilities. After becoming a sky immortal, Feng Zichen's speed of refining merit points had greatly increased. Within a few breaths, he completed the process of becoming one with the Tao and became a Tai Jingxian. Moreover, he was in the consummation realm. At the same time, his merit was also exhausted. He did not raise his cultivation level to that of Daoyuo Jingxian. However, this was not the end. Feng Zichen suddenly stood up, bowed to the sky, and said, "In the name of the heavenly way," the poor way of Fengdu saw that in the Nether Blood Sea, countless true spirits had gathered. They did not have spiritual wisdom, did not understand the heavenly way, and did not know the true self. They suffered day and night from the erosion of evil energy. I could not bear it. Therefore, I specially set up the ghost path to pass on the method of ghost cultivation. I will open the path for the dead, so that they can enter the door of the great way again, and free the billions of true spirits. May the heavenly way be the judge. Ghost path set up. As he spoke, Feng Zichen sat down cross-legged, and began to talk about the method of ghost cultivation. His voice was so loud that it spread throughout the blood sea. All living beings must die, and the dead must return to the earth. This is called a ghost. A ghost is a soul. It has 3 souls and 7 spirits. 3 souls: fetus light, Shuangling, and Yujing. 7 spirits: corpse dog, concealed arrow, sparrow een, seizing thief, non-poison, filth removal, and smelly lung. Following Feng Zichen's narration, the true spirits in the blood sea seemed to be enlightened. A wisp of light of wisdom appeared, and they gradually developed spiritual intelligence. To be able to persist in the blood sea for so long without being eroded by the evil aura. Their cultivation when they were alive was definitely not to be underestimated. Therefore, after they obtained the method of cultivation, with the help of it, they all developed spiritual intelligence again. After these people developed spiritual intelligence, they first bowed to Feng Zichen. Then, they hurriedly followed the method of ghost cultivation that Feng Zichen passed down to condense their 3 souls and 7 spirits. They had already formed a soul, and they continued to cultivate the ghost code. Only after losing something would one know how to cherish it. They had already died once. Therefore, they understood the value of life. This was a rare opportunity to cultivate, so he naturally cherished it very much. Every time a true spirit developed spiritual intelligence, the heavenly way would bestow merit. And when this true spirit developed spiritual intelligence, and stepped on the path of Tao again, the heavenly way would bestow merit. As more and more true spirits developed spiritual intelligence, more and more true spirits embarked on the path of cultivation. Feng Zichen's merit also accumulated more and more. Endless enlightenment floated in his heart, enveloping him and rushing towards the Daoyuo realm. At the same time, the merit of splitting open the sky was also exerting its power, raising Feng Zichen's comprehension to the limit, helping him to understand the mysteries of Panga's primordial spirit. There was a loud rumble. A bright light suddenly erupted from Feng Zichen's body. It broke through the layers of void and directly pierced through the long river of destiny, proving the Tao of Daoyuo Jingxian. At this moment, Feng Zichen once again proved the Tao of Daoyuo Jingxian, achieving the Daoyuo Jingxian with the ghost Tao. I wonder which fellow Taoist is so free and leisurely to specially split a clone and come to the blood sea to prove the Tao. In the depths of the blood sea, Taoist Mingi could be said to have witnessed the entire process of Feng Zichen's Tao proving with his own eyes. Daoyuo Jingxian, who had achieved the Tao of Daoyuo Jingxian in 100 years, Taoist Mingi would not believe that he was not the clone of some great divine ability. However, that person had covered his background, obviously wanting to expose his identity. Taoist Mingi would not ask for trouble, and take the initiative to investigate the other party's background. With this fellow Taoist here, I think the blood sea will not be lonely. Looking at Feng Zichen, Taoist Mingi said in an inexplicable tone. If it was in the past, Feng Zichen had come to the blood sea to prove the Tao without saying anything, given Taoist Mingi's temper, he would definitely chase him out. However, after the battle with Tai, Taoist Mingi understood a principle. In the primordial world, it was necessary to have 1 or 2 close friends. This way, when he encountered trouble, he could have a helper. Now that a great divine ability had taken the initiative to come over, Mingi, who was thinking of ways to make friends, could not ask for more. How could he refuse? In any case, the blood sea was big enough. Not to mention one great divine ability, even if a few more came, it could accommodate them. Furthermore, Feng Zichen's ghost Tao was still beneficial to the blood sea. The reason why the netherworld blood sea had so much resentment was because of these true spirits. Now, with the appearance of the ghost Tao, the resentment was eliminated. The situation of the blood sea should be improved a lot. As for the ghost Tao, other than feeling curious, Taoist Mingi did not take it to heart. He was not the only one. Many great divine abilities of the primordial world were the same. Now that the netherworld had not appeared, ghost cultivators had no foothold, and had no future. The gazes of the great divine abilities were still on the living. In comparison, the primordial world belonged to the living. Dead people. What was that? They were just losers. What trouble could they cause? Chapter 351. The moment Daoyuo Jingxian proved his Dao in Fengdu. Feng Zichen's original body also changed in the Ziwei Dao embryo on the Ziwei star. Wisps of purple light appeared and wrapped around his true spirit, as if they were nurturing something. It was the primordial spirit embryo. Daoyuo Jingxian proved his Dao in Fengdu. His primordial spirit already had a trace of the mysteries of Panga's primordial spirit. Now, through the mysterious connection, that wisp of mystery was transmitted to his original body, helping him evolve his innate primordial spirit. The Ziwei star was formed by Panga's ancestral aperture. It was where his divine court was located, where his primordial spirit lived, and also the former residence of the heavenly Tao. It could be said that the Ziwei star was the #1 place of creation in the primordial world. Even Kunlun Mountain could not be compared to it. It was much easier to reverse engineer Panga's primordial spirit here than in other places. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was like the heavens were helping him. When Great Emperor Ziwei's innate primordial spirit was successfully evolved, his physical body, primordial spirit, and true spirit would be perfect. That meant that it was time for him to be born. However, if Di Jun's Tai did not die, even if he was born, he would not be able to walk out of the Ziwei star. Going out meant death. Of course, if Feng Zichen could fight against the entire demon race by himself, he would be able to go out. But obviously he could not. This era belonged to Di Jun. The next era belonged to him. After Feng Zichen proved his Tao, the merit did not end. It was still flowing in endlessly. However, this merit was no longer enough to improve his cultivation. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought for a moment, and suddenly formed a seal. He gathered the merit aura into a ball, and poured it into the ground under his feet. Rumble. Amidst the violent rumbling, the surrounding earth veins surged crazily and merged with the merit aura, forming a huge mountain peak that rose from the bottom of the sea. The mountain peak was magnificent, as if it was going to pierce the clouds. It rose up with a whoosh. In a few days, it was already level with the sea of blood, and was about to emerge. At this moment, the seal in Feng Zichen's hand suddenly changed. The aura of virtue no longer surged towards the ground. Instead, it turned into golden flames that burned towards the mountain peak. Sizzle, accompanied by a sizzling sound. The impurities on the mountain were refined by the fire of virtue, and they turned into wisps of black smoke that dissipated into the sea of blood. As the flames of virtue smelted the mountain, the origin of the sea of blood hidden in the blood water was unavoidably extracted by the flames of virtue and fused with the mountain. A smear of blood appeared on the mountain. Although it was very faint, it was exceptionally obvious. Furthermore, as more of the blood sea's origin fused into the mountain, the blood-red color became darker, and the mountain gradually turned blood-red. At the same time, the fire of virtue became even more vigorous. Even more impurities were refined out, and the mountain was shrinking at a visible speed. Virtue Qi was refined by the heavenly Tao with the quintessence of the heavens and the earth, and it possessed the ability to create all things. Feng Zichen had fused it into the earth veins, and his goal was obvious. He wanted to create a paradise, a blessed land for ghost cultivators. Regardless of whether there was the netherworld or not, ghost cultivators needed a place to settle down. And he, Feng Zichen, the great emperor of the Bane necropolis, the ancestor of the ghost Tao, also needed a dojo to preach the methods of ghost cultivators and control thousands of ghosts. Luoshan. Fengdu Luoshan. This was the name that Feng Zichen had given to the mountain peak, and it was also the name of his future dojo. The great emperor of the Fengdu Luoshan was in charge of the netherworld, controlling thousands of ghosts, establishing the 6 palaces of the grotto heaven, and sealing the ghosts and gods of the 6 heavens. Dojo. It seems that this fellow Taoist is really planning to settle down in the sea of blood. Then, the poor Wei will lend him a hand as a sign of goodwill. Seeing Feng Zichen's actions, Taoist Mingyi naturally guessed his plan. After thinking for a while, he decided to help him develop the dojo. As long as the other party settled down in the Sea of Blood, he would be a natural ally. If he showed goodwill now, it would be easier to build a relationship later on. As for becoming an enemy of Taoist Mingyi, what a joke! He was the lord of the Nether Blood Sea, one of the top 10 great mediums in the primordial world. Did he really think that everyone was Tai? The number of people in the primordial world who could be his enemy, other than the saints, would be less than 5. Go. Grabbing at the void, Taoist Mingyi forcefully pulled out a ball of the origin of the Sea of Blood and threw it at Luo Shan. Rumble. The origin of the Sea of Blood entered the body, and Luo Shan's changes suddenly became intense. The mountain turned completely dark red. An evil aura flowed out. Thank you, fellow Taoist. The poor Wei has something to do, so I can't come forward to thank you. I hope you can forgive me. After stabilizing Luo Shan, Feng Zichen bowed to Taoist Mingyi from afar. In the Sea of Blood, only he could give out the origin of the Sea of Blood so casually. Haha. You're welcome, fellow Taoist. The matter in front of you is more important. You and I will talk later. Taoist Mingyi replied with a smile. Thank you for your understanding, fellow Taoist. After replying, Feng Zichen continued to use his divine ability to transform Luo Shan. After obtaining a ball of the origin of the Sea of Blood, Fengdu Luo Shan's origin was undoubtedly more vigorous. However, Luo Shan was a blessed land created after all. Compared to those blessed lands created by nature, it had more craftsmanship and less nature. It was ultimately inferior. After frowning and pondering for a while, Feng Zichen suddenly raised his right hand. Using his finger as a pen and merit as ink, he began to write on Luo Shan. What he wrote was the supreme scripture of the Ghost Tao, the Ghost Codex. However, those words were extremely unfamiliar and looked sinister. They were words that had never appeared in the primordial world. Those were ghost words. Words that were born from the luck of the Ghost Tao. With the appearance of the ghost words, the merit that had begun to decrease suddenly increased again and surged toward Luo Shan. At the same time, the power of heaven and earth descended and acted on Luo Shan's body. Endless creation. A few days later, the power of heaven and earth and the power of merit dissipated, revealing a mountain that was 1,000,000 feet tall. It was Luo Shan. Although this mountain was not big, it looked quite imposing and did not lose to the top blessed lands of the primordial world. Feng Zichen had spent so much merit. If he could not create a top blessed land, then it would be a huge loss. This mountain is called Luo Shan. It is the training ground of the poor Wei, and also the ancestral land of the ghost cultivators. From now on, anyone who is in the Ghost Tao can enter this mountain to cultivate. After looking at Luo Shan, Feng Zichen suddenly turned around and said to the group of ghost cultivators. These were all his future subordinates. He had to nurture them well. As the first generation of ghost cultivators, their aptitudes were definitely the best. This was because they were all innate life forms when they were alive, and most of them were formed from the innate true spirits of the Tai Jingxian. Otherwise, they would not have been able to resist the corrosion of the Blood Sea's evil aura. With such a background, becoming a Daoyuo Jingxian might not be realistic, but becoming a Tai Jingxian was much easier than others. Think about it. How many innate true spirits were gathered in the Netherworld Blood Sea? It was simply uncountable. This was accumulated over the endless years of the primordial world. The number was naturally far beyond imagination. Chapter 352. Among these innate true spirits, as long as 1 in 100 million, no 1 in 100 million managed to cultivate Tai Jingxian, it would be a terrifying number. In the future, the Jie sect was known as the number 1 force in the primordial world. The 10,000 immortals did not refer to Daoyuo Jingxian, but Tai Jingxian. If 10,000 Tai Jingxian could have such power, then Feng Zichen's Fengdu would definitely be stronger than the Jie sect. How could a sect be compared to a Dao? Teacher is merciful. Below, the ghost cultivators hurriedly bowed and said. After being taught by Feng Zichen, it was reasonable for them to call him teacher. If not for the fact that they were afraid that Feng Zichen would be angry, they would have directly called him master. Go in. Feng Zichen waved his hand and helped the ghosts up. Thank you, teacher. The ghosts waited for a while. When they saw that Feng Zichen had no intention of accepting disciples, they were slightly disappointed. Those who could create their own Tao were definitely the top experts in the primordial world. The ghosts were not fools. Naturally, they knew that there would be great benefits if they became the disciples of such a person. Unfortunately, he had no intention of accepting disciples. However, it was also good to be able to enter Luo Mountain to cultivate. This was their teacher's Tao field. If there was an opportunity in the future, they might be able to become his disciple. With this thought in mind, the ghosts bowed and entered Luo Mountain one by one to find a place to cultivate. Seeing the ghosts' performance, Feng Zichen nodded in satisfaction. Accept disciples? He did not know what the ghosts were like. How could he accept disciples so easily? At the very least, he had to observe for a period of time. His disciples had to inherit the destiny of the ghost Tao. It was related to the rise and fall of the ghost Tao. He could not be careless. These ghosts were not newborn living beings. They were as pure as a piece of white paper. They were all old demons who had been reborn and had a lot of thoughts. If he did not understand them and rashly accepted them as disciples, he might be cheated by them one day. Thus, accepting a disciple was a big deal, and they had to be careful. Back then he had taken Feng Jie and the other two as his disciples, because Feng Zichen knew their backgrounds very well. However, it was different from the current group of ghost cultivators. After a while, Feng Zichen seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly formed a seal with his hand and pointed at Luo Shan. Suddenly, the ghostly runes carved on the Luo Mountain suddenly shone brightly, and let out a rumbling sound that spread throughout the entire Nether Blood Sea. The content of the Tao voice was none other than the introductory chapter of the Ghost Codex, the supreme scripture of the Ghost Tao, the method to condense the soul, as well as the method to cultivate the Yin spirit. The Nether Blood Sea was boundless, and there were countless innate true spirits. Feng Zichen had only preached for a few years, and the effect he could achieve was limited. How many people were able to activate their spiritual wisdom and step into the Ghost Tao? It was probably not even a billionth of the total. What about the remaining true spirits? Every day, new true spirit fragments would come from all over the wilderness. After all, countless living beings would die every day in the primordial world. These true spirits had never heard Feng Zichen talk about the Ghost Tao. What should they do? It was impossible for Feng Zichen to stay at Luo Shan and talk about the Ghost Tao to the ghosts of the Blood Sea all day. This was unrealistic and impossible. However, he could not ignore these true spirits. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought of a way to imprint the Ghost Codex on Luo Shan and spread it to the entire Blood Sea through Luo Shan, ensuring that every true spirit in the Blood Sea could hear it. The current Luo Shan was similar to a radio station in the future, constantly transmitting signals to the Blood Sea. And this signal could only be received by true spirits. It would not affect others. Of course, since it was a signal, there was naturally a difference in strength. The closer one was to Luo Shan, the better the signal, and the more complete the content one could hear. On the other hand, if one was far away, one could only hear some shallow content. It was not a problem to cultivate with this, but it was impossible to achieve anything great. Therefore, if one wanted to obtain the complete method of ghost cultivation, they could only get closer to Fengdu Luo Shan until they arrived in front of Feng Zichen. The easier it was to obtain, the less they would cherish it. If Feng Zichen directly spread the supreme scripture of the Ghost Tao, how would the world know the preciousness of the Ghost Codex? At that time, Feng Zichen's efforts would probably be belittled. Only when it was not easy to obtain would the world cherish it and know the greatness of Feng Zichen. Even if Tao ancestor Hongjun imparted the Tao, the innate life forms had to first pass the test of the chaos outside the heavens. All of a sudden, all the living beings below Daoyuo Jingxian were eliminated. Even Tao ancestor Hongjun was like this, let alone Feng Zichen. Seeking the Tao had always been difficult. Besides, if Feng Zichen directly imparted the Tao, the ghosts would cultivate outside and not come to Fengdu Luoshan after obtaining the Tao. Then wouldn't he become a commander without an army? If the 10,000 ghosts were gone, how could he command them? Moreover, those ghost cultivators had only entered the Tao after obtaining his Tao. If any of them were to cause trouble outside, the karma involved would be recorded on his head. In this way, not only would he not get any benefits from preaching to the world, but he would also get into trouble. Then Feng Zichen would really be a fool. Therefore, he wanted to obtain the supreme inheritance of the ghost Tao. Yes, he could come to Fengdu Luoshan and be under Feng Zichen's control. Naturally, he could obtain the ghost codex. Otherwise, he could only rely on himself. Feng Zichen could not say anything about creating a cultivation method with his own ability. Not to mention Feng Zichen's reality. The atmosphere of the entire primordial world was like this. There were no good people in the primordial world. Those who were good people were all dead. The fate of ancestor Hong Yin was a living example. The rumbling of the Tao sound did not stop for 3 years. It was not until 3 years later that it gradually calmed down. Fengdu Luoshan also needed energy to release the Tao sound. Moreover, it was the Tao sound that spread throughout the entire netherworld blood sea. The amount of energy required to do this was even greater. And this energy naturally could not be produced out of thin air. What it consumed was the Khanate Qi released by Luoshan. However, Luoshan still had to support the group of ghost cultivators on the mountain. It was impossible for him to use all his Khanate Qi on the Tao sound. Ghost cultivators also had to cultivate. They came to Luoshan for Luoshan's cultivation environment. If there was no Khanate Qi here, why would they stay here? Even with the supreme inheritance, without the Khanate Qi, Luoshan could not keep the ghost cultivators. 3 years was already Luoshan's limit. The next time would have to wait for 100 years. After all, Luoshan's power was not endless. After formulating the rules for Luoshan, Feng Zichen nodded in satisfaction, and was about to turn around and walk towards Taoist Mingyi. Taoist Mingyi had contributed to the establishment of Luoshan. Of course, he had to thank him. Moreover, the netherworld blood sea was his territory. Feng Zichen had settled down here, without his permission. He had to explain properly to avoid any misunderstandings. However, just as Feng Zichen was about to move, a sudden change occurred in the sky. Chapter 353. 2 pitch-black beams of light came from outer space. They crossed layers of void at an unimaginable speed, and rushed towards the blood sea. In an instant, the 2 beams of black light approached from afar. They arrived at the blood sea from outer space, and turned into 2 Khanate numinous treasures that floated in front of Feng Zichen. Looking at the 2 Khanate numinous treasures, Feng Zichen was a little puzzled. However, suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, and he understood the origin of the 2 Khanate numinous treasures. They were Khanate numinous treasures bestowed to the ghost Tao by the heavenly Tao. When the ghost Tao was first established, it did not have any treasures to suppress destiny or protect the Tao. Therefore, the heavenly Tao specially bestowed 2 Khanate numinous treasures. One was to suppress the destiny of the ghost Tao, and the other was to protect the safety of the ghost Tao. This was to protect the ghost Tao and prevent it from dying halfway. If there was life, there would be death. The cycle of life and death was the truth of heaven and earth. It could be said that the appearance of the ghost Tao made the primordial world more perfect. The heavenly Tao had never been stingy with such a Tao that could perfect the primordial world. It could be said to be very generous. These 2 Khanate numinous treasures were definitely extraordinary. With that thought in mind, Feng Zichen reached out and grabbed the numinous treasure closest to him. When the numinous treasure entered his hand, there was a pop sound. The black light membrane that enveloped its body shattered, revealing the true appearance of the Khanate numinous treasure inside. It was a long black banner that was densely covered with runes. It emitted a strange light. It was incomparably dark and deep, as if it wanted to devour one's mind. Soul Summoning Banner. That was its name. It was a supreme-grade Khanate numinous treasure with 44 Khanate divine restrictions. It was only 2 Khanate divine restrictions away from being a Khanate cardinal treasure. As the name suggested, the Soul Summoning Banner could summon one's soul. It was a treasure that targeted the essence soul. With a shake of the Soul Summoning Banner, It could capture one's soul and essence soul. Anyone who touched it under Daoyuo Jingxian would die. Even if Daoyuo Jingxian was careless and was hit by the banner, his essence soul would tremble, and he would be in a daze for a moment. If it was more serious, he might even be unconscious for a few days. The power of this treasure was obvious. It was the #1 killing treasure of the Ghost Dao. Of course, as a supreme grade innate spiritual treasure, the power of the banner was not limited to this. It could also condense a shattered primordial spirit and restore it to its original state, thus achieving the effect of resurrection. The soul summoning flag was a natural spirit treasure that was born from the Tao of life and death, and it possessed the ability to reverse life and death. Good treasure. Even though Feng Zichen had a lot of treasures, he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised after knowing the function of the soul beckoning banner. Bringing the dead back to life was no small matter. Reversing life and death was against the natural order of things. How could the heavenly Tao allow it so easily? If he really did it, it would consume his providence. Moreover, the soul summoning banner wanted to revive living beings with shattered primordial spirits. This was even more difficult. If one's primordial spirit was shattered, it was equivalent to having one's soul scattered. Only a golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven would be able to recall the broken fragments of the primordial spirit from the boundless void and reassemble it to reappear in the world. However, this was a huge burden for Daoyuo Jingxian. How could it be easy to fight for one's life against the heavens? Logically speaking, Daoyuo Jingxian was omnipotent. It should be easy to condense a shattered primordial spirit. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Unfortunately, the primordial world had Mount Buzhou. It suppressed the river of space-time and made it impossible for anyone to change the past or the future. It was even more impossible to reverse the cause and change everything. Because of Mount Buzhou, Daoyuo Jingxian's strongest method was crippled. He could not reverse the flow of time and change the past. Otherwise, with just a thought from a golden immortal, time would flow backward. No matter how thoroughly one died, he could revive them. Of course, people who had been forgotten by the entire history were exceptions. Daoyuo Jingxian did not have the ability to revive such a person. The soul summoning flag could do something that even Daoyuo Jingxian could not do easily. Wasn't that the manifestation of its power? Furthermore, since the soul summoning flag could target the essence soul, it could naturally target ghost cultivators. It could restrain all ghost cultivators, and was the nemesis of the Ghost Dao. It had to be said that the heavenly Tao had considered everything. With this treasure in hand, Feng Zichen's incarnation would be much more at ease in the future. The Ghost Dao not only had to respect him as its ancestor, but it also had to respect him. The heavenly Tao is really generous. After putting away the flag, Feng Zichen was very happy. There were not many connate numinous treasures that were so close to connate cardinal treasures in the primordial world. Then, Feng Zichen looked at another connate numinous treasure. The flag had already brought him enough surprises. What kind of surprises would this connate numinous treasure bring him? It was really exciting. After crushing the light membrane, the connate numinous treasure inside revealed its true appearance. It was a large square seal. Simple. It was unusually simple. Apart from that word, Feng Zichen could not find any other adjectives to describe it. It was too ordinary and did not look gorgeous. It was square and did not have any embellishments around it. It was like a square stone. Only the ancient aura that had settled down after countless years and countless vicissitudes of life showed that it was not as ordinary as it looked on the surface. Ghost Emperor Seal. That was its name. It was ordinary, but it had a domineering name that did not match its appearance at all. Its aura was not as strong as the flag. In fact, it was far inferior. The Ghost Emperor Seal only had 9 connate divine restrictions, and could barely be considered a low-grade connate numinous treasure. It was at the bottom of the connate numinous treasures, and formed a sharp contrast with the soul summoning flag. However, such an ordinary Ghost Emperor Seal was more precious than the soul summoning flag. That was because it was the treasure of destiny of the Ghost Dao. It was tightly connected to the destiny of the Ghost Dao. As the destiny of the Ghost Dao grew stronger, it would become stronger. Now the ghost Tao had just been established. Other than Feng Zichen, there was not even a single cultivator in the heaven immortal realm. It could be said to be extremely miserable. How much destiny could such a ghost clan have? The reason why the Ghost Emperor seal could become a connate numinous treasure was because of Feng Zichen. If it was not for the fact that he had Daoyuo Jinxian's cultivation base, and naturally had the destiny of the Tao, the Ghost Emperor seal would probably be a connate Dharma treasure when it was born. It was not even a connate numinous treasure. Ghost Emperor seal. What a good name. Only such a treasure is worthy of my identity. The Ghost Emperor seal, the seal of the Ghost Emperor, represented the supreme power of the Ghost Tao. It matched Feng Zichen's identity. Reaching out, Feng Zichen held the Ghost Emperor seal. Immediately, a burst of light flashed, and two large words appeared on the Ghost Emperor seal. They were written with connate Tao patterns. It was none other than Fengdu. As such, the Ghost Emperor seal was officially renamed Fengdu seal. This also meant that from now on, Fengdu was the Ghost Emperor, and the Ghost Emperor was Fengdu. When the world heard the name Fengdu, they knew that it was the Ghost Emperor. Fengdu had become synonymous with the Ghost Emperor. Luoshan come. After sizing up the Fengdu seal for a moment, Feng Zichen suddenly formed a Dao seal and pointed at Luoshan. He forcefully extracted a wisp of destiny from it and injected it into the Fengdu seal. Chapter 354. The blessed grotto heavens were created by heaven and earth. They were born with a wisp of heaven and earth's luck. Luoshan was no exception. As the ancestral land of the Ghost Path, and the holder of the supreme scripture of the Ghost Path, Luoshan's luck and the Ghost Path's luck could be said to be tightly connected. Now that the Ghost Emperor seal had appeared, there was nothing wrong with Luoshan, who was a part of the Ghost Path's luck, contributing a wisp of connate luck to increase its power. Buzz! After absorbing a wisp of Luoshan's luck, the seal of Fengdu's aura suddenly soared by a large margin. It almost broke through the boundary of an inferior grade connate numinous treasure, and became a superior grade connate numinous treasure. At the same time, Luoshan's shadow slowly appeared on the seal of Fengdu's body, making it look a little different. Soon, it won't be long before the seal of Fengdu becomes a superior grade connate numinous treasure, or even a supreme grade connate numinous treasure. Although Luoshan's luck did not allow the seal of Fengdu to advance, Feng Zichen was not disappointed, because he knew that when the netherworld realm appeared, the Ghost Path's luck would soar, and the power of the seal of Fengdu would also increase greatly. When the heaven realm appeared, the demon race's luck would soar, and they would have the capital to contend against the witch race. Then the benefits that the netherworld realm, which was not weaker than the heaven realm, could bring to the Ghost Path could be deduced. Ghost was the name of the dead. In theory, it occupied half of the primordial world's forces, and was the opposite of life. From this point of view, the future of the Ghost Path could be said to be limitless. There was a faint trend of it becoming the number one force in the primordial world. However, if everything in this world could be carried out according to theory, there would not be so many disturbances. There was a difference between expectations and reality. If there was no reincarnation, the power of the Ghost Path might grow. However, after the appearance of reincarnation, the Ghost Path would completely lose its chance to prosper. If one could live, who would want to die? If one could be a human, who would want to be a ghost? If one could become an immortal, who would step into the Ghost Path? Now the Ghost Path was the only choice for the dead to start over again. However, after the appearance of reincarnation, there were more possibilities for the dead in the world. As for the Ghost Tao, it became a helpless choice. In the end, it was because the Ghost Path was not the righteous path. If the path of ghosts was like the great path of Xianmen, where several saints appeared one after another, the people of the world would definitely fight to learn it. Therefore, the theoretical power of the Ghost Tao depended on Feng Zichen's future achievements. If he used the Ghost Tao to achieve primordial chaos, it was hard for the Ghost Tao not to flourish. In the future, there were only 4 orthodoxies that flourished in the world, and had an endless supply of incense: Xianmen Diabolism, Taoism and Buddhism. These 4 orthodoxies had one thing in common: That was, they all had saints behind them. This was to tell the world that only orthodoxies with saints could remain immortal in the world. After all, the primordial world was a place that emphasized strength. In this place, strength determined everything. As long as the Emperor of Fengdu was strong enough, there was no need for him to do anything. The path of Ghost would naturally prosper. The world's yearning for power was unstoppable. After seeing the highest achievement of the Ghost Dao, they would rush forward one after another. After Dao ancestor Hongjun became a saint, the great Dao of the celestial sect of wonders became the mainstream of the primordial world. Everyone was proud of being the successor of the celestial sect of wonders. This was because they saw an incomparably vast future from the great Dao of the celestial sect. Becoming a saint. Indestructible. If the path of Ghost was like this, it was inevitable that it would prosper. After putting away the seal of Fengdu, Feng Zichen first calmed himself down from thinking about the future, and became extremely excited. Only then did he walk slowly towards Daoist Mingi. Poor Wei of Fengdu greets fellow Daoist Mingi. Feng Zichen bowed and greeted him. So it's fellow Daoist Fengdu. May I know which immortal mountain you cultivated in previously, and why you came to the Blood Sea? Daoist Mingi asked after returning the greeting. Although he welcomed other great mediums to stay in the Blood Sea, he couldn't make it too obvious. Otherwise, it would seem that he was begging others. This wasn't good. If word got out, would he still want his face? Therefore, he still had to have the right attitude. Moreover, Daoist Mingi was also quite curious about Feng Zichen's background. It would be best if he could ask about it. In Daoist Mingi's heart, he had already confirmed that Feng Zichen was the incarnation of a great mediums. What he needed to do now was to confirm the identity of this great mediums, and see who he was. It was good that he had an idea in his heart, and knew which fellow Taoist was on his side. Fengdu is just a primitive wanderer. He roams everywhere, and has no fixed residence. In the past, let's not talk about it. Waving his hand, Feng Zichen put on a look as if he couldn't bear to look back on the past and said, "Fellow Taoist, you must be joking." Daoist Mingi's face twitched. He resisted the urge to scold him and forced a smile. This person's ability to lie really came out of his mouth. Ghosts wandered everywhere. With your cultivation when you first came to the Blood Sea, you were only in the innate realm. Not to mention wandering. I'm afraid that you would be accidentally trampled to death by ferocious beasts as soon as you stepped out. If this incarnation had not been condensed in the Blood Sea, Daoist Mingi would have read his name backwards. When Feng Zichen condensed his soul, his cultivation was only in the innate realm. Daoist Mingi was not a fool. How could he not see that this was an incarnation condensed by a great mediums? The Blood Sea was a dangerous place. Even Tai Jingxian had to be careful when they came. You were just a small innate realm cultivator. If you swaggered through the Blood Sea, wouldn't you be telling others that there was something wrong with you? However, Daoist Mingi only thought these words in his heart, and did not say them out loud. Feng Zichen's attitude had already made it clear that he would not reveal his true identity. If these words were to be said, other than making the two of them fall out directly, it would be useless. Of course, Daoist Mingi also knew in his heart that if it was so easy to find out the other party's true origin, the other party would not have hidden so much previously. But in the end, he still had to give it a try. If he succeeded, his goal would be achieved. That would be a profit. If he failed, it did not matter. The other party was in the Blood Sea. There would be a day when he would give himself away. Daoist Mingi did not believe that the other party's identity could be hidden forever, right? If it really could not be done, there were only so many great mediums in the primordial world. If he compared them one by one, he would eventually be able to find out. Here, poor Wei has to apologize to you first. Without your permission, Fengdu settled down in the Blood Sea without your permission. I hope you can forgive me. After a while, Feng Zichen suddenly apologized to Daoist Mingi. As everyone knew, the Netherworld Blood Sea was Daoist Mingi's territory. He had settled down here without giving any notice. Even if he was chased out by Daoist Mingi, he deserved it. No matter how he talked about it in the primordial world, he would not be able to make any sense. No one would stand on his side. Feng Zichen's actions were like secretly running to someone else's land, thinking that it was not bad, and directly building a house there. Chapter 355. If this happened to anyone, they would not be able to tolerate it. Feng Zichen thought for a while. If this had happened to him, he would have been the one to blame. Tieskegi. If someone settled down on Ziwei planet, not to mention a home, he would tear that person down. If he was already like this, what about others? Although he did not know why Taoist Mingi did not care much about this matter, and even took the initiative to help him build Luoshan Blessed Land, but he still had to apologize. After all, no matter what, he was in the wrong in this matter. Haha. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to do this. This sea of blood is lonely and filthy. If there are outsiders willing to live in it, and add some life to the sea of blood, the poor Wei would be happy. Why are you angry? Taoist Mingi replied with a loud laugh. Feng Zichen's attitude made him very satisfied. Therefore, when he spoke, he could not help but have some feelings. The sincerity in his tone was touching. Unfortunately, Feng Zichen did not appreciate it at all. Instead, he felt that he had become stupid from practicing martial arts. It was fine if he was not angry about this kind of thing, but he even looked happy. It was really strange. Originally, Feng Zichen had planned to spend a lot of money to dispel Taoist Mingi's anger. However, his attitude at this time was something that Feng Zichen did not expect at all. He could not help but be a little stunned. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Please take care of me in the future, fellow Taoist. However, soon, Feng Zichen reacted and hurriedly said, no matter what Taoist Mingi's purpose was, since he had already expressed his attitude, he would just follow along. It was good to save a sum of money. Therefore, not only did Feng Zichen say it, but he also changed his words and called Taoist Mingi as fellow Taoist to improve the relationship between the two of them. Fellow Taoist, you are really broad-minded. You are far from comparable to Fengdu. In the end, Feng Zichen added a sentence. It could be considered as him saying it from the bottom of his heart. This sentence was true. Taoist Mingi could not even care about this kind of thing. His breadth of mind was indeed far from what Feng Zichen could compare to. Looks like rumors can't be trusted so easily. Seeing how happy Mingi Taoist was, Feng Zichen praised him again. After all, she owed him a favor. Even if he praised her a few more times, she would not lose a piece of flesh. You're exaggerating, fellow Taoist. You and I are neighbors, so we should help each other. There's no need to be so polite. After being praised by Feng Zichen, Mingi Taoist not only felt complacent, but also blushed as he spoke. To prehistorical powerful beings, as long as it didn't involve the fundamental competition of the great Tao, they still cared about their reputation. Even the saints were no exception to this. Just like that, the two of them started chatting and exchanging some cultivation experiences. Although it was said to be an exchange of cultivation experiences, in reality, it was Taoist Mingi who was speaking and Feng Zichen who was listening. The gap between them was too great. Taoist Mingi was one of the top 10 great mystical abilities in the primordial world. He had once heard of the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace, and was friends with the saint. He was an old monster who had lived for countless years. His experience, his accumulation, his comprehension of the great Tao, and his understanding of heaven and earth, even 10 Feng Zichen added together could not compare to him. Fortunately, Feng Zichen had the inheritance of Pangu and the inheritance of the 3,000 Chaos Fiend gods. His understanding of the great Tao was more advanced. When Taoist Mingi was talking, he could interject from time to time, and share his own opinions, so that the scene would not be too awkward and turn into a one-man show for Taoist Mingi. Feng Zichen's goal was to ease his embarrassment. Little did he know that his actions made Taoist Mingi more and more certain that he was the incarnation of a great mystical ability. No, it was not as simple as a great mystical ability. Perhaps it was a supreme expert left behind from the ancient times, a big shot of the same generation as the Tao ancestor. At Taoist Mingi's level of cultivation, it was extremely difficult for him to improve. However, every time he thought about Feng Zichen's opinions, he would gain something and his cultivation would improve a little. Although it was only a tiny bit, he was indeed making progress. How incredible was this? Just one sentence could make him gain something. The great mystical ability of the same generation as him would never be able to do that. They had known each other for hundreds of millions of years. Although they did not completely understand each other's background, it was not a problem to understand each other's methods. They were all old demons who had lived for many years, who did not know each other. If they really had this ability, their cultivation would have surpassed others and reached the Tao realm. They would not be like him, struggling in the sage-to-be realm. Therefore, Feng Zichen's original body was definitely not a great mystical ability of the same generation as him. Among the great mystical ability of the untainted land, other than those of the same generation as him, there were only the overlords of the ancient times and the supreme experts of the ancient times. After him, no great mystical ability was born. Among the innate gods and demons who were born in the current era, there were not many who were in the sage-to-be realm, let alone great mystical ability. It could even be said that there was not a single one. That was because the time they had cultivated was too short. If they wanted to cultivate to the sage-to-be realm, how could it be possible without the accumulation of an eon? This seemed to be a curse. Since the emergence of the sage-to-be realm, no one had been able to cultivate to the sage-to-be realm within an eon. If it was not a junior, it could only be a senior. Moreover, Feng Zichen's understanding was full of the charm of chaos. That was the unique aura of the ancient times, when heaven and earth had not fully evolved. In this way, Feng Zichen's identity was about to be revealed. The supreme expert left behind from the ancient times, the overlord of the ancient times. Only such a person could come into contact with the great Tao that was far beyond the heavenly Tao. The ancient times were an era that people yearned for. There were opportunities that later generations did not have, opportunities that belonged to the great Tao. As for Feng Zichen's expression of sudden realization, thoughtfulness, or confusion when he listened to his preaching, he automatically imagined that it was a disguise in order to hide his identity. The supreme expert of the ancient times bathed in the glory of the great Tao. He was definitely experienced and knowledgeable. How could he be shocked by his Tao? It must be a disguise. At this moment, Taoist Mingyi seemed to have fallen into a misunderstanding. In order to confirm his guess, he forcibly imagined all kinds of reasonable reasons. The more he thought about it, the more reasonable he felt, and he firmly believed it. At this time, even if Feng Zichen told him the truth, he would not believe it. That was why it was said that one's imagination was the most fatal. It was not entirely Taoist Mingyi's fault. After all, what Feng Zichen said was the truth of the demon god of chaos, which contained the mystery of the great Tao. It was really too frightening. Of course, with Taoist Mingyi's wisdom and realm, no matter how frightening Feng Zichen's words were, he might not be able to tell at first. But as the topic went deeper, it was impossible for him not to see the problem. However, Feng Zichen had the merit of splitting open the sky. It seemed that he had a premonition that he was about to leave. From the beginning, the merit of splitting open the sky was fully exerted. He intended to do his best to help Feng Zichen at this last moment. Chapter 356. Under the influence of the merit of creation, Taoist Mingyi's spiritual sense was infinitely weakened, so much so that some subtle flaws were ignored by him, and those obvious flaws were forcibly filled in by him with various reasons and reasonable explanations. It was a pity that Taoist Mingyi, a legend of a generation, had suffered a big setback today. His wisdom of the past was completely gone, and his thoughts were gradually corrupted and became more and more deviant. Affected by this, Taoist Mingyi became more and more polite. Feng Zichen was a little confused. Facing Taoist Mingyi's sudden enthusiasm, he could only smile in response to him, lest he be too embarrassed. If Feng Zichen knew what Taoist Mingyi was thinking, he would not know whether to cry or laugh. His body was indeed an incarnation, but his realm was only that of Daoyuo Jingxian. He was still thousands of miles away from being a great magician. As for being a supreme master from the Archean era, that was even more impossible. It had been less than 1,000,000 years since he was born. He had not even touched the edge of the Archean era, let alone the Archean era. It was just that Feng Zichen had no idea what Daoist Mingi was thinking. He could only continue to chat with him, extremely puzzled. What's going on with Daoist Mingi? Why is he becoming more and more enthusiastic? Strange, really strange. He seems to have misunderstood something? Gradually, Feng Zichen tasted a hint of meaning from Daoist Mingi's words. He seemed to have a great misunderstanding and regarded himself as a peerless master. At this moment, Feng Zichen was speechless. He was not a fool. On the contrary, he was very smart. Especially now, with the blessing of the merit of creation. His wisdom had reached an unimaginable level. Daoist Mingi's abnormality, of course, could not be hidden from him. Along with Daoist Mingi's words, Feng Zichen understood the cause and effect. But he did not explain anything. Daoist Mingi's misunderstanding was only good for him, and there was no harm. Since he had misunderstood, he would let him continue to misunderstand. The most important thing now was to find a way to leave so that he would not be exposed. Things like realms could be concealed for a while, but not forever. The gap between Daoyuo Jingxian and the sage-to-be was obvious. Daoyuo Jingxian saw a completely different world, and had a completely different understanding of the heavenly Tao. If they continued to talk, Feng Zichen's brain would run out of ideas, and he would be exposed. Therefore, he had to leave. He had to leave quickly. Before he was exposed and Daoist Mingi was fully convinced, he had to leave quickly. It was hard to imagine what kind of unwise thing Taoist Mingi would do when he realized the truth, and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Come to think of it, it would definitely be very terrifying. At the very least, it would not be something that a Daoyuo Jingxian level incarnation like him could bear. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen hurriedly searched for one or two plausible primordial chaos theories from Penga's inheritance. Following Mingi Taoist's words, he suddenly spoke. Then, when Mingi Taoist was about to comprehend something, Feng Zichen said directly, "Brother, Poor Wei has just come to the Blood Sea and is not familiar with this place. Therefore, I plan to take advantage of my free time to travel around the Blood Sea and familiarize myself with the situation here. Therefore, if you have nothing important to do, Poor Wei will leave first. When everything is settled, I will come and discuss with you." After all, they were going to settle down in the Blood Sea. It was reasonable to familiarize themselves with the situation. There was nothing wrong with Feng Zichen's excuse. "Help yourself, brother. Poor Wei still has something important to do, so I won't see you off. I hope you won't blame me." Now Daoist Mingi's mind was completely attracted by the primordial chaos theory that Feng Zichen threw out. He only wanted to comprehend it as soon as possible. How could he tolerate anything else? Therefore, in the face of Feng Zichen's request to leave, he did not even think about it and directly agreed. Stepping into the primordial chaos Tao realm had become Daoist Mingi's obsession. Anything related to it could firmly attract his mind. Moreover, it was the primordial chaos theory that Pangu had passed down. If not, even if Daoist Mingi did not accompany Feng Zichen to travel the Blood Sea, he would have personally sent him out. How could he be like now? His tone was full of impatience, and there was a hint of wanting to drive him away. It had to be said that Feng Zichen was really crafty. He had completely figured out Daoist Mingi's thoughts. On the one hand, he had completely attracted Daoist Mingi's mind by throwing out the primordial chaos theory, so that he would not have the time to care about his departure. On the other hand, with the primordial chaos theory, Daoist Mingi's understanding of him as an ancient supreme expert would undoubtedly be deeper and more convinced. "Brother, Poor Wei will leave first." After bowing to Daoist Mingi, Feng Zichen turned and walked out. After this, his treatment in the Nether Blood Sea would undoubtedly be much better. It would also be more convenient for him to do things in the future. That was, before he became a great divine power, it was better for him to not meet Daoist Mingi, so as not to expose his background and cause big trouble. After leaving Daoist Mingi's place, Feng Zichen did not return to Luoshan. Instead, he quickly rushed towards the depths of the Blood Sea. At the same time, his divine consciousness was also crazily gushing out, covering every place he passed. He seemed to be looking for something, and also seemed to be sensing something. That's right, Feng Zichen was looking for something. He was looking for the nether realm. In the past, Pangu opened the sky, the chaos shattered, and the innate clear and turbid chi were born. The innate clear chi was light and agile. It floated up, forming the sky and giving birth to the heaven realm. The innate turbid chi was thick and heavy. It sank down, turning into the earth and giving birth to the nether realm. The heaven realm was in the sky. The nether realm was naturally on the ground. And the deepest part of the earth was the deepest part of the nether blood sea. The nether realm was in the blood sea. Otherwise, why would the blood sea be called the nether blood sea? The nether realm had long existed. It was just that the opportunity had not arrived and had not appeared. Just like how the demons wanted to establish the heavenly court, the heaven realm was born. The nether realm would only appear when Hutu transformed into reincarnation. Now Hutu had yet to transform into reincarnation, and the nether realm had yet to appear. It was probably impossible to find it from the depths of the earth. The heaven realm was above Mount Buzhou. But before it appeared, who could find it? One had to know that back then, when the great masters went to the Purple Cloud Palace to listen to the Tao, they had entered the chaos beyond Mount Buzhou. 3,000 great masters had passed by this place several times, but they had never found the shadow of the heaven realm. It could be seen how hidden it was. If the heaven realm was like this, the nether realm, which was of the same level as it, might not be that bad. The Taoist Mingyi was the master of the blood sea. For countless years, he had never discovered the existence of the nether realm. However, just because others could not find it did not mean that Feng Zichen could not find it. He was fated to be in the nether realm. The nether realm, also known as the netherworld, was a world that belonged to the dead. It was a world that belonged to ghosts. Chapter 357. Feng Zichen established the ghost path and passed down the ghost cultivation method. He was the master of the ghost path, the emperor of all ghosts. With such an identity, he was the supreme god of the netherworld, the ruler of the netherworld, and the destined master of the netherworld. This was his fate with the netherworld. As the future master of the netherworld, it should not be too difficult for Feng Zichen to find the netherworld if he wanted to. Swoosh! Swoosh! Feng Zichen rushed towards the depths of the blood sea at the fastest speed. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. On this day, Feng Zichen, who was rushing, suddenly felt a different aura. His heart trembled, and he stopped abruptly. It's here. That aura was extremely cold, as if it came from the netherworld. The coldness it emitted was enough to freeze one's primordial spirit. Without a doubt, only the netherworld could emit such a cold aura. Even if it was not, it had a lot to do with it. Boom. A majestic ghost aura erupted from Feng Zichen's body. It was so powerful that it made the void tremble. As the void trembled, the ghost aura kept pouring in and spreading into the depths of the void, as if it was looking for something. It wanted to find traces of the netherworld. However, the netherworld was hidden too deeply. The ghost aura searched almost all the void, but it could not find any trace of it. Moreover, the aura that it had sensed earlier seemed to have disappeared, and could not be found anymore. Suddenly, Feng Zichen sat down cross-legged and chanted the Tao scripture. For a moment, the sound of Tao resounded through the void. Countless runes bloomed. They were vast and unfathomable. Billions of them were endless. The runes were not blazing, nor were they dazzling. On the contrary, they were pitch black and emitted a strange light. They were incomparably deep, like a black hole that wanted to devour one's soul. Those were the ghost path runes, which were used by the dead. They were formed by the extremely cold aura. Swoosh! As soon as the ghost path runes appeared, they spread out and covered the entire void. Strands of black chi appeared, emitting a shocking chill. Just a glance was enough to make people feel a chill from the depths of their souls. The energy of the ninth hell was pure yin energy without any yang energy. It was a specialty of the netherworld, and it was of extreme yin and extreme coldness. It was specially targeted at the soul core. Buzz buzz, the void trembled again. The appearance of the 9 underworlds chi triggered an inexplicable change. At the same time, the runes of the ghost path also moved. A strange power spread out and resonated with the path of death, attracting its power. In the next moment, the world changed. All signs of life disappeared in an instant, replaced by a dense aura of death. The law of life was also disappearing, replaced by another law filled with the aura of death. Everything was turning around. The reversal of life and death. In the blink of an eye, the world underwent a huge change, completing the transformation from a world of life to a world of death. The netherworld had appeared. Feng Zichen used the ghost Tao to forcefully shake the great Tao of death in the unseen world. Borrowing its great power, he suppressed the depths of the blood sea and forced the nether realm to appear. Phew, comfortable. This is the world that I should be in. Taking a deep breath, Feng Zichen inhaled the aura of death floating in the void into his abdomen. Not only did he not feel uncomfortable, but he also felt unusually comfortable. His incarnation was a ghost after all. It was obvious that he was more used to the aura of death than the aura of life. Coming to this world filled with the aura of death was like returning home. Naturally, he felt incomparably comfortable. Rumble. In front of Feng Zichen, the ghost chi suddenly surged, slowly forming the shadow of a world. That was the netherworld. Because from that blurry image, Feng Zichen vaguely saw a huge gate. The gate of hell, the supreme treasure of the netherworld, the legendary gate to the netherworld. It was the gate to the netherworld. As time passed, the shadow of the netherworld became more and more real, and the true appearance of the gate was gradually revealed. It was a huge pitch-black gate, and its entire body was enveloped by a dense aura of death. It was incomparably eerie. Because of its special identity, it was connected to the netherworld. Therefore, its height and size were unknown. Looking up, one could see that there was a big board hanging on the gate. On it were the 3 big golden words Gate of Hell, written with innate Tao patterns. Behind the Gate of Hell was a yellow dirt road. It was very long and led to the depths of the netherworld. That was the Yellow Springs Road, the last part of the road that the dead had to walk. Later generations said that on both sides of the Yellow Springs Road, there were fiery red spider lilies. They were as red as blood. From afar, it looked like a carpet paved with blood. Because it was as red as fire, it was known as the road illuminated by fire. This was also the only scenery and color on the long Yellow Springs Road. People would step on the spider lilies to lead them to the netherworld prison. However, in today's world, the netherworld had yet to appear. Even the netherworld had yet to be born, let alone the spider lilies that appeared later. As a result, the Yellow Springs Road now looked completely barren, with nothing at all. If it was not in the netherworld, it would be no different from an ordinary yellow dirt road. A purple brilliance appeared and dyed Feng Zichen's eyes purple. This was the Tao Eye. In order to see the scene behind the Yellow Springs Road, Feng Zichen used the Tao Eye. In an instant, his vision changed. It was as if he had merged with heaven and earth and obtained an infinite expansion. All the fog was disappearing. His gaze passed through the layers of void, and saw the scene in the depths of the netherworld. At the end of the Yellow Springs Road, a green stone appeared. On its body, there was the power of time that could not be dissipated. There was also a trace of fate. The 3-life stone. This should be one of the legendary treasures of the netherworld, the 3-life stone. From the aura that it exuded, it was not difficult to tell that it was a supreme-grade innate spirit treasure. Moreover, it was a time attribute innate spirit treasure. Moreover, it seemed to have been favored by fate. There were traces of fate on its body. The 3-life stone was about 30 feet in size. The front was as smooth as a mirror. There were words on the back that were as red as blood, introducing its functions. At the top, the words "Reach the other shore early" were engraved. They were as red as blood. It recorded everyone's previous life, current life, and future life. The cause of the previous life, the effect of the current life, the cycle of fate, the rise and fall of fate were all heavily engraved on the 3-life stone. It witnessed the bitterness and joy, sorrow and joy, laughter and tears of all living beings. The debts that should be paid, and the feelings that should be repaid were written off in front of the 3-life stone. It was born from time and formed from fate. It reflected the past, future, and present. It had all kinds of karma and had endless magical uses. It was truly a first-class treasure. Unfortunately, such a treasure could not be moved. Otherwise, it would be another earth-shattering treasure in the primordial world. Heaven-defying items naturally had restrictions. The ability of the three-life stone was so powerful. If it was used carelessly, wouldn't it cause trouble? Would the order of the world still be needed? If there were no restrictions, such a treasure would not be a supreme-grade connate spirit treasure, but a connate cardinal treasure. Without restrictions, it was the privilege of a connate cardinal treasure to unleash its power without any scruples. It was also because of this that connate cardinal treasures truly had the power to destroy the world. That was why there were so few connate cardinal treasures in the primordial world. The heavenly Tao could still see more than 10 connate cardinal treasures and observe carefully. There would not be any major trouble. If there were 100 connate cardinal treasures. Just thinking about it made one's teeth ache. That was not a connate cardinal treasure, but a bomb that could blow up the entire world. If there were 100 connate cardinal treasures, the heavenly Tao would not need to operate the world. It would be enough to focus on the owners of these connate cardinal treasures. With 100 time bombs at home, no one would sleep well. If they suddenly exploded, the consequences would be too serious. There would be a problem if the heavenly Tao did not keep an eye on them. Sigh. What a pity for a good treasure. Shaking his head and sighing, Feng Zichen continued to look back. If he could not leave the netherworld, half of the three-life stone would be wasted. Furthermore, Feng Zichen felt that even in the netherworld, the three-life stone could not be used casually. Otherwise, the three-life stone would not have become a public item of the netherworld in the future. Obviously, one had to pay a certain price to use it. And this price was very, very big, so big that no one dared to become its owner. A treasure related to fate, its price was naturally related to fate. Just this point alone was enough to make people shrink back. Fate could not be explained or seen through. It was better not to provoke it. Behind the three-life stone was a high platform made of yellow soil. That was the home viewing platform. Here, one could climb the platform and look at the situation of the Yang family. Thus, this place became a window for ghosts to look at the world of the living. It was also a holy land for the living and the dead to communicate. When they arrived at the home viewing platform, they finally looked at their hometown and cried loudly. Only then did they wholeheartedly head to the next stop, the netherworld, to receive their trial. It was the ghost on the home viewing platform panicked, looking with 2 lines of tears. Wife, children, old and young, huddled by the coffin, relatives and friends gathered in the morning hall. Behind the home viewing platform was a majestic palace. It was the palace of the Lord of the Netherworld, and also where the Netherworld was located in the future. This palace was the same as the immortal palace of the heavenly court. It was created by heaven and earth. It was overflowing with light and vibrant colors. It was surrounded by Taoist rhymes and was extremely majestic. However, reincarnation had yet to appear, and the Netherworld had yet to appear. The entire Netherworld was empty, and not a single ghost could be seen. After glancing at these great halls, Feng Zichen did not find the legendary 10 halls of Yama, nor did he find the shadow of the 18 levels of hell. That's right, the 10 halls of Yama and the 18 levels of hell were all created by Buddhism. In the beginning, the Netherworld did not have these things. The first master of the Netherworld was the Bain Fengdu Emperor. He was the ruler of the Netherworld, the ruler of the Netherworld, and the ruler of the Netherworld. The Emperor of Fengdu was the ruler of Hell. He held the highest position in the Netherworld, and was in charge of the Netherworld. He was the master of all ghosts in the world. All living creatures would enter Hell after death. Their souls were all under the jurisdiction of the Emperor of Fengdu. He would kill ghosts and punish them based on the sins they had committed when they were alive. There were 75 divisions under him. Each division was in charge of capturing ghosts and notifying them of their entry and exit. If there were relatives of the Yangtze who expiated the ghosts of the Netherworld, the Emperor of Fengdu would also decide to pardon them and send their ghosts to be refined into the heavens. Under his name, there were the ghost emperors of the 5 directions, and the ghost gods of the 6 heavens of Rahu heaven to help him manage the Netherworld. The Emperor of Fengdu was the ruler of the Netherworld. His position was second only to the master of Samsara, Hutu, and he had boundless power. Even the Lord of Mount Tai of the celestial sect of wonders, the great sacred emperor equaling heaven of the eastern peak, entered the netherworld and ruled the netherworld. He was called the Een Son of Heaven, and still had to be respected. As for the 10 halls of Yama, they were the Een Son of Heaven's subordinates. Even the Een Son of Heaven had to listen to the Emperor of Fengdu, let alone them. In order to plan the netherworld, Buddhism first sent out the 10 halls of Yama, and then established the 18 levels of hell. They worked hard and finally perfected the rules of the netherworld. The 10 halls of Yama divided power and greatly increased the speed of the netherworld's operation. The netherworld was indeed better than the previous model. The appearance of the 18 levels of hell was even more significant. It divided sins into 18 levels, causing people to enter according to their sins. It showed the fairness of the heavenly Tao. The original Fengdu hell was not as perfect as the 18 levels of hell. The heinous and evil people, as well as ghosts and demons, were all imprisoned in the Fengdu hell, never to be reincarnated. The Fengdu hell was more terrifying and sinister than the 18 levels of hell in the Buddhist world. However, it was not as fair as the 18 levels of hell. Buddhism had contributed greatly to the development of the netherworld. However, before Buddhism could receive the fruits of victory, the celestial sect interfered. Not only did they incorporate the 10 halls of Yama, but they also took over the 18 levels of hell. If not for Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's help in stabilizing the netherworld, Buddhism would have suffered a double loss this time. There's always a higher mountain. Thinking of the legends of the future, Feng Zichen sighed. Buddhism's plan could be said to be perfect. They almost took control of the netherworld. But unfortunately, the celestial sect's skills were better. They directly took away their results, making Buddhism's efforts go to waste. However, these were not important. Now these results were all his. After he entered the netherworld, the 10 halls of Yama and the 18 levels of hell would be opened by him. The pagoda had been in his hands for so many years. It was time to put it to use. He believed that the 18 levels of hell formed by the pagoda would definitely be more perfect than the ones opened by Buddhism. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen looked towards the center of the netherworld. That was the Ghost Emperor's bedroom, which was also his future residence. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, Feng Zichen saw a mirror. With just a glance, he almost fell into it. Under the reflection of the mirror, all his sins from birth until now were reflected. One by one, they appeared in his heart and questioned him. Even merit could not stop it. This tribulation was born from the heart. External forces were useless. Fortunately, Feng Zichen had always done things with a clear conscience. A mere heart-examining tribulation was not a problem for him. In just a few days he regained his clarity and broke through the tribulation. At this moment, when he looked at the mirror again, he was completely unaffected. So it's the mirror of karma. No wonder it's so capable. In front of him, there was a high platform with a mirror on it. The platform was 10 feet tall, and the mirror was big. It hung to the east, and 7 words were written on it. There are no good people in front of the mirror of karma. It was the treasure of the netherworld, the mirror of karma. All karma had retribution. This was what the mirror of karma could do. Good souls did not have to come to the mirror of karma, because there were words on the platform. There were no good people in front of the mirror of karma. If a good person died, his spirituality would be bright. In front of the mirror of karma, there was only emptiness. It was only because there was no shadow in his heart that he could not see his true form clearly. Chapter 358. The light of the good soul became brighter and brighter. The greater the virtue, the closer it was to the heavenly court. There was no need for them to come here if they wanted to investigate the merits and demerits of the various palaces. Hence, the retribution mirror was also known as the retribution mirror. The retribution mirror was formed by the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. When a mortal soul came here, it could illuminate their appearance and not hide at all. However, this was not the retribution mirror's power. People lived from young to old, and had many sins in their lives. However, people were also spiritual beings. They understood what they did. As the saying went, they knew it in their hearts. They remembered all the sins of their lives in their hearts. They knew what they were doing. Their actions were not ordered by their hearts. The most evil in their lives came from their hearts. In front of the retribution mirror, all kinds of sins appeared. Even if one was protected by virtue and was not tainted by negative karma, one still could not escape the retribution mirror. The retribution mirror targeted the sins in one's heart. This matter had nothing to do with virtue or cultivation. It came from the heart. It was a tribulation of the heart. Only with a clear conscience could one break through it. No matter how powerful one's magic power was or how much virtue one had, as long as one felt guilty, one would have nowhere to hide under the retribution mirror. The retribution mirror revealed its true form and secretly supplemented the scriptures. In-laws were selfless, and young people were punished for their evil deeds. What a heaven-defying treasure! Even Daluo Jingxian would lose his soul for a moment if the retribution mirror accidentally shone on him. After witnessing the might of the retribution mirror, Feng Zichen could not help but sigh. When experts fought, a moment of absent-mindedness could decide everything, not to mention a moment of absent-mindedness. The outcome could be reversed in an instant. The might of the retribution mirror could be seen from this. However, like the three-live stone, the retribution mirror could not leave the underworld. Otherwise, it would be another earth-shattering treasure. Feng Zichen withdrew his gaze from the retribution mirror and continued to look ahead. Just then, a fork in the road appeared at the back of the underworld. Feeling curious, Feng Zichen followed his senses and looked at one of the paths. That is, hellfire. At the end of the path, Feng Zichen saw a fiery domain. It was huge, even bigger than the great wide world. It was filled with black flames burning fiercely, but it wasn't hot. Instead, it emitted a chill that penetrated one's soul. That was hellfire, a supreme true flame born from the quintessence of the netherworld. It possessed boundless might, extreme een and extreme coldness, and it was one of the 10 great true flames of the primeval era. The fire domain was boundless, as if it was connected to the 9 underworlds. There was no end in sight, and the closer one got to the core of the fire domain, the stronger the hellfire became. Before he even got close to the core of the fire domain, Feng Zichen felt a bone-piercing chill. It followed his gaze and burned toward him. He was forced to withdraw his gaze in advance. So strong. The power of this fiery domain is so strong. Even if Daluo Jingxian came, he wouldn't be able to last long in the core of the fire domain. At most, he would be burned to ashes in 100 years. Feng Zichen said with lingering fear as he mobilized his dermic powers to extinguish the hellfire that was burning towards him. Without a doubt, in the netherworld, the only place that could have such a terrifying scene was hell. This fire domain was the legendary hell. It was the original hell, the hell that was born spontaneously from the quintessence of the netherworld. Before the netherworld was in charge of hell. The Buddhists used it as the foundation to create the 18 levels of hell. Anyone who bore karma would be sent to hell after death and suffer the pain of the hellfire burning their souls. The heavier the karma, the closer one was to the core of hell, the heavier the pain. Daluo Jingxian couldn't escape either. It was created by heaven and earth. It's really dangerous. Just the contact made Feng Zichen understand that if he didn't have a supreme treasure to protect himself, even he couldn't break into this hell. If he wasn't careful, he might fall into it and be in danger of dying. Hell was the prison of the netherworld. It was a place to imprison and punish the souls of the dead who had sinned deeply in their lives. It was an important part of the operation of heaven and earth. It showed that good and evil would be repaid. It was the embodiment of the justice of the heavenly Tao. This was an important place in the primordial world. No matter how dangerous or terrifying it was not an exaggeration. If it wasn't strong, how could it show the greatness of the heavenly Tao? Feng Zichen looked at hell with slight fear and retracted his gaze. No matter how strong hell was, so what? In the end, it was still his. At the end of the other road, as Feng Zichen expected, was the bridge of helplessness. After drinking Mengpo's soup and crossing this bridge, one could be reincarnated. There were 3 bridges, all paved with bluestone. The The bridge in the middle was the most gorgeous. This was the bridge prepared for the ghosts of good people. Those who could cross this bridge all had merit on them. They walked the highest level of reincarnation. In their next life, they would either be rich and noble, or become immortals and achieve the Tao. They were born extraordinary. This was a noble bridge. Those who could cross this bridge would definitely be nobles in their next life, no matter what happened in this life. The bridge on the left was ordinary and did not look outstanding. This was a bridge prepared for ordinary people. These people did not make any great contributions in their lives, nor did they make any great mistakes. After crossing this bridge, there would be no preferential treatment, nor would there be any harsh treatment. They would walk the ordinary cycle of reincarnation. In their next life, they would continue to join an ordinary family and repeat the life of their previous life. Only when they had a shocking encounter would their fate change. They could either do good and accumulate merit, do evil, or meet a noble person. All of these could change their fate. The bridge on the far right was a little simple. The huge blue stone was full of mottled traces. It was very desolate. This was a bridge prepared for evil people. Those ghosts who were entangled in negative karma would pass through this bridge after returning from the punishment of hell and enter the worst reincarnation. In their next life, they would be animals like cows, horses, pigs, and sheep, or plants like flowers and trees. In short, they would no longer be humans. The bridge of helplessness, the bridge of helplessness. In the future, the bridge of helplessness's reputation could be said to be the greatest among the treasures of the netherworld, second only to the 6 paths of reincarnation. This was not because its power was stronger than other treasures. Instead, it was because there were too many sad and beautiful love stories about it. The bridge of helplessness, the parting of the previous life, the meeting of this life, and the reunion of the next life. Thinking of the legends of the future, even Feng Zichen could not help but look at the bridge of helplessness a few more times. Unfortunately, in front of the bridge of helplessness, it was empty, not to mention infatuated men and resentful women. Even Mengpa could not be seen. Even goddess Pingxin had not been born, let alone Mengpa. The entire nether realm was silent. That was not right. There was still sound. Under the bridge of helplessness, the river of forgetfulness flowed. The river of forgetfulness was also the legendary Yellow Spring. Corresponding to the Milky Way in the sky, it was the most terrifying river in the world. The 9 underworlds' weak water was in it. This river could sink all things. Goose feathers did not float, birds did not cross. Cultivators below Daoyuo Jingxian, who fell into the river of forgetfulness, would probably never be able to come up again. After looking at the bridge of helplessness, Feng Zichen subconsciously looked behind it. That was where the 6 paths of reincarnation were. What? That is, however, with this glance, Feng Zichen found that something was wrong. In the land of reincarnation that was supposed to be empty, there was a huge roulette wheel in it. Chapter 359. The roulette was not clear. It was very illusory, as if it did not exist. However, its aura was abnormally terrifying. The distance between Feng Zichen and it was a world. Even so, with just a glance, he felt a chill and fear from the bottom of his heart. It was as if he would be swallowed by the roulette in the next moment. Hiss, so powerful, so powerful. Sucking in a breath of cold air, Feng Zichen was so shocked that he took a few steps back. Even when he faced the Eastern Emperor Tai, he did not expect to be so terrified and powerless today. It was an uncontrollable panic. In front of this roulette, he felt extremely small, as if he was facing the heavenly Tao. This roulette actually gave him the illusion that he was facing the heavenly Tao. It was as if it was the Tao. The Tao should be like this. It was extremely unbelievable. It was not that Feng Zichen had never seen a primordial treasure. When he was at Kunlun Mountain, he had come into contact with the Taiji painting, the Panga banner, and the 4 immortal killing swords. He had even controlled the cauldron of heaven and earth for a period of time. However, the feeling that these primordial treasures gave him was far less powerful than the roulette in front of him. But how was this possible? Primordial treasures were already the peak of the primordial world. Heaven-splitting treasures were the peak of the peak. In the primordial world, there should not be any more powerful treasures than them. However, this roulette did it. Its aura far exceeded that of a primordial treasure, but it was not like a primordial treasure. It was between the two and was very strange. Moreover, this was not what shocked Feng Zichen the most. What shocked him even more was that this roulette was obviously not complete. It was still in the incubation stage. Its figure was extremely illusory, as if it would shatter with a poke. It was also like a ball of the origin of the Tao, constantly evolving. This formless appearance was telling Feng Zichen that it was not complete. The strength that it was displaying now was far from perfect. It had not been completely born, but it already had the strength that far exceeded that of a primordial treasure. If it was truly born, how terrifying would it be? It would probably not be weaker than a primordial treasure. When it was truly born, it might be called the number 1 primordial treasure. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Disc. This must be the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Disc. Only he, the legendary number 1 treasure of the Netherworld, and the number 1 treasure of the Great Desolate Era, would possess such heaven-defying power. Just a wisp of his aura was enough to intimidate Daoyuo Jingxian, and make him think that he was unstoppable. Feng Zichen forcefully calmed his mind and sighed in shock. In the Netherworld, there was only a single treasure that possessed such might, the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Disc. This treasure was a supreme treasure that operated the heavens and earth. It was related to the life and death of countless living beings. He rotated life and death, making the cycle of life and death perfect in heaven and earth. He was also connected to karma and fate. This was a top-notch treasure of the primordial world. No matter how strong it would not be overboard. However, wasn't Samsara transformed into later Earth? But now, the Lady of Earth hadn't even touched the edge of the Blood Sea, let alone reincarnation. But where did this 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc come from? Could it be that Samsara wasn't transformed by the later Earth? Or was it not the Samsara disc? After thinking about it, Feng Zichen felt that both were possible. What if he was excited and recognized the wrong thing? After all, he had never seen the real 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc with his own eyes. He couldn't tell what it looked like. It was indeed difficult to distinguish the real from the fake with just a wisp of aura. It was better to take another look to distinguish the real from the fake. In fact, in Feng Zichen's heart, he vaguely felt that the possibility of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation not being the later Earth was higher. The power of that will was too strong. There was no second one in the entire Great Desolate Era. Other than the 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc, it could not be anything else. However, the later Earth reincarnation was his inherent impression. He had always firmly believed so since he was born. Now he was suddenly told that reincarnation was not the later Earth reincarnation. This, if it was anyone else, they would probably not be able to accept it for a while. Therefore, Feng Zichen decided to take another look and dispel the wisp of luck in his heart. Boom. When Feng Zichen's gaze touched the reincarnation disc again, it was as if the world had exploded, and a terrifying power erupted. The misty holy light, the churning chaotic airflow, and the energy that could split the world appeared beside the reincarnation disc, tearing everything apart and cutting off the long river of time. In the next moment, the chaos collapsed, and the endless void shattered. The universe was boundless, born, and destroyed, as if it was a cycle of reincarnation. Before he could react, Feng Zichen's gaze was sucked into the 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc. In just an instant, he seemed to have experienced thousands of reincarnations, witnessed the vicissitudes of life, witnessed the change of heaven and earth, witnessed the birth and death of the universe. Gradually, an ancient and boundless aura appeared on Feng Zichen's body. It was incomparably ancient, and incomparably ancient. It was an aura that had settled down after countless years, an aura that belonged to ancient living beings. At this moment, if Daoist Mingi came and felt the ancient and boundless aura on Feng Zichen's body, he would probably be even more certain of his guess. This person was definitely a supreme expert of the primordial era. However, at this moment, Feng Zichen's situation was not very good. The power of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc was too terrifying. The reincarnation of that lifetime was not as simple as life and death, but the destruction of a great world. A lifetime of reincarnation was a great world. The process from birth to destruction. Just how long would it take for that to happen? In an instant, under the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation disc, Feng Zichen had experienced thousands of reincarnations. This meant that in an instant he had witnessed the birth and death of thousands of great worlds. Moreover, as time passed, he experienced more reincarnations and witnessed more and more worlds being born and destroyed. This could be said to be a good thing. Feng Zichen's accumulation was insufficient, causing a huge flaw to appear in his state of mind. After this experience, he had witnessed the birth and death of countless worlds. With so much accumulation, he might be able to make up for his shortcomings and make up for his greatest weakness. But this was too much. In such a short period of time, Feng Zichen had experienced too many reincarnations. How old was he? Less than 1,000,000 years old. And how long would it take for a world to be born and die? The answer was 5.6 billion years. Of course, the great world derived from the 6 paths of reincarnation disc was not real. It was an illusion and could not exist for so long. However, the birth and death of a great world, even if it was only 1,000,000 years, thousands of times had passed, tens of thousands of times had passed, billions of years had passed, or even tens of billions of years had passed. This time was far longer than the time Feng Zichen had existed. How could 1,000,000 years of experience be compared to 1,000,000,000 years of experience? These reincarnation experiences were enough to erase Feng Zichen's memories of the primordial world. Chapter 360. As time passed, Feng Zichen gradually realized that something was wrong. His memories of the primordial world were actually blurry. It was as if they were memories from a long time ago. Countless years had passed, and he could not remember them clearly. Thousands of reincarnations and billions of years of erosion were about to make Feng Zichen lose himself. He gradually could not distinguish between illusion and reality. Was the experience of the primordial world real? Or was the experience at this moment real? At this moment, Feng Zichen's heart was abnormally conflicted. The two memories were fiercely clashing, and a wisp of confusion appeared in his eyes. Where on earth was he? What was real? What was fake? At this moment, Feng Zichen once again tasted the bitter fruit of his insufficient state of mind. Daoyuo Jingxian was an existence that gathered his own timeline. Time no longer had any meaning to them. Even if they accidentally fell into it, they could still calmly escape. How could they be like Feng Zichen, who was so unbearable? Under the impact of time, they did not even have the slightest strength to resist, and were about to be lost in it. If this were to spread out, it would be a disgrace to Daoyuo Jingxian. Fortunately, Daoyuo Jingxian was Daoyuo Jingxian. At the moment when his life was threatened, Feng Zichen's primordial spirit could not help but tremble, waking him up abruptly. Not good. After coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen immediately understood his situation. Before he could think carefully, he was about to cut off the gaze that had fallen into reincarnation, and cut off his connection with the 6 paths of reincarnation. Dong dong dong. At this moment, a melodious bell rang, interrupting Feng Zichen's actions. That was Hongming Daozhong. Under the influence of the bell, Feng Zichen's heart immediately calmed down. No matter how heaven and earth changed, how time changed, how the universe was born and destroyed, the endless reincarnation could no longer affect him in the slightest. He seemed to have transcended from the cycle of reincarnation, and experienced the thousands of reincarnations from the perspective of a bystander. At the same time, the merit of creation was also shining, releasing its power to its heart's content. It raised Feng Zichen's perception to the limit, helping him to comprehend the birth and death of the universe and the principle of reincarnation. Just like that, Feng Zichen was immersed in Tao enlightenment. His state of mind was rapidly growing. The experience of thousands of lifetimes was enough for him to see through everything. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was believed that after this, Feng Zichen's state of mind, which was caused by his rapid breakthrough, would completely disappear. It would be completely made up for, and he would even be one step closer. From then on, his shortcoming, that fatal weakness, the flaw in his heart, would no longer pose a threat to him. Only when his state of mind was perfected could his Dao fruit be truly perfected. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for him to always look like he was lacking in mental fortitude. Along with the birth and death of the universe, endless great Tao and endless rules were spread out in front of Feng Zichen's eyes. Between the birth and death, there was a great opportunity, a great creation. The birth and death of the universe, the great Tao was born and destroyed, and the rules of heaven and earth were the same. Watching the entire process was the greatest fortune and opportunity. Let's ask, in this world, was there any greater creation than personally experiencing the birth and death of the world? No, the creation of heaven and earth was the greatest creation. If not for this, Pangu wouldn't have thought of opening the sky to prove his Tao. Personally experiencing these reincarnations, the birth and death of the universe, brought immeasurable benefits to Feng Zichen. His realm was soaring, and his comprehension of the Tao was becoming deeper and deeper. With the help of the Hongmeng Daozhong and the merit of creation, this great crisis that was enough to make Feng Zichen's heart skip a beat was turned into a shocking opportunity. Fate was really unpredictable. 3 days later, Feng Zichen, who had experienced countless reincarnations, finally woke up. A wisp of purple light bloomed from his eyes, and it was exceptionally bright. At a glance, it was as if he had seen all the changes in the world and seen all the ups and downs of fate. Only 3 days had passed, but Feng Zichen had spent hundreds of millions of years in the cycle of reincarnation. Now that he had escaped from the cycle of reincarnation, he couldn't help but feel as if a lifetime had passed. Reincarnation is really magical. After cutting off some unimportant memories, Feng Zichen completely regained his senses. At this moment, his heart was filled with shock. Reincarnation was too terrifying. The experience of 3 days was equivalent to countless years of his bitter cultivation. Such a powerful ability was countless times stronger than the great Tao of time and space. Although the great Tao of time and space could also speed up cultivation, it was obvious that it couldn't help people hone their state of mind. From the experience just now, the great Tao of time and space seemed to be wrapped in the path of reincarnation. No, not only the great Tao of time and space. It seemed that all the great Taos in the world could be found in the path of reincarnation. To be exact, the path of reincarnation was a process, a continuous cycle. From nothing to something, and from something to nothing. This process was called reincarnation. Reincarnation was a circle. There was no beginning and no end. It could also be said that the beginning was the end. Whether it was the life and death of the people, the destruction of the stars, or the birth and death of the universe, it was a continuous cycle. And it was also a kind of reincarnation. If one couldn't reach the great Tao and transcend, no one could escape the fate of reincarnation. The primordial world was no exception. Feng Zichen raised his hand, and Hongmeng Qi appeared, turning into 1 yuan, divided into 2, and developed 3. All kinds of innate runes were born, intertwined, and evolved into innate Qi, forming an extremely small world in his hand. As soon as this world was formed, before it could develop, it shattered and turned into a ball of Hongmeng Qi again. This was also a reincarnation. After experiencing 100 reincarnations, Feng Zichen more or less understood the principle of reincarnation. Just now, he was testing his path of reincarnation, using the Hongmeng Qi to deduce the birth and death of the world. Unfortunately, his understanding of the path of reincarnation was too shallow, causing the world to be destroyed as soon as it was born. Otherwise, the evolution of that small world would definitely be more perfect. Stars would be born, and even life would be born. Thousands of races would compete for hegemony, forming a perfect reincarnation. The mystery of the path of reincarnation was something that people yearned for. Putting away his unnecessary thoughts, Feng Zichen looked at the 6 paths of reincarnation disc again. Comprehending the path of reincarnation was not something that could be done overnight. However, with the help of the 6 paths of reincarnation disc, the speed of comprehending the path of reincarnation would undoubtedly be greatly accelerated. At this point, there was nothing to doubt. That disc was undoubtedly the #1 treasure of the primordial world, the 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc. It was not created by Hutu, but by nature. Its power was boundless, and it was a supreme treasure that pushed the cycle of life and death. Thinking about it, although Hutu's cultivation level was not the strongest in the primordial world, it was still among the top. How many people in the primordial world were at the great perfection of sage to be? You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.